Seriously? Wow. Okay, good point, Jacob. Apparently, I put that we were going to go live at 11:30 a.m., which is ridiculous Eastern time. But we're here live with Sam Householder, with myself, Robert Schmitz. We're about to record. Bear with me live post game. And Sam, what a sad one. How do you feel?
Well, it's just one of those things. I think everybody on Bears Twitter, we were all very downtrodden and kind of like accepting of our fate, and then they forced that they got that missed field goal at the end there, and so then it was like, I'm gonna have my heart in this for another minute 49. I think they got the ball back left, and it was like, okay, here we go, and then yep, just enough to break our hearts. So here we are.
Yep. And I mean, look, I'll be honest. Okay, Sam. So I feel like I get put in a spot where I have to be really reactionary, right?
Mhm,
I I get post game at WCG, and then
mhm.
when I go through the all 22, I almost feel like I have to overmake every one of my points. If something's bad, I make it sound like it's extra bad. If something's good, I make it sound like it's extra good. It's not necessarily me trying to be reactionary, but boy, oh boy, sometimes it's going to sound like I flip on a dime. And because of that, Sam, and I'll say this when we actually start recording the podcast here in a little bit,
Mhm,
I don't want to act comfortable
mhm.
with needing the last play of the game to beat that Commanders team because that Commanders team should have died a long like they should have lost much more emphatically. Like
Oh, for
I
sure.
get it, there are a lot of people right now that are saying that Fields put up X yards, and imagine putting up X yards behind X cast, and Herb Street was just being really harsh. And I get it. Honestly, I do. Like, I've been a fan a long time. It's not to say, oh, wow, I'm so big. I'm not a fan. I am a fan, Sam. I'm just I just want to actually have real grounded reasons to hope that Fields is going to get better instead of looking at this team right now and saying, I know it took Valus Jones fumbling a second punt in 3 weeks, which is ridiculous. I
Mhm,
know it still could have been a win right at the very end of the game. I know that Herb Street was practically on a warpath, but gracious alive, Fields Fields really is making a lot of this harder on himself.
mhm.
And QB growth isn't linear. Just because he didn't chain 3 decent weeks in a row, which would have been decent against New York, good against, if not very good, against Minnesota, and really bad, not really, but like relatively bad against Washington, that doesn't mean that he's an automatic bust. But Sam, if you're feeling like I'm feeling, this was frustrating because we used to get really excited over the fact that Mitch threw 2 interceptions, but threw to an offensive lineman who was wide open to beat the Rams 13-10. And I'm just not there.
Mhm.
Like the offense, it might as well be independent of the defense. And the offense lost their matchup very emphatically. And the worst part was it wasn't because the running game was doing super well or like doing super badly. It wasn't because the receivers weren't necessarily open. It felt
Mhm.
like the quarterback was either picking bad matchups or holding onto the ball a little bit too long, or basically, I mean, it sounds so silly, Sam, but like if there's something that I feel like is problematic right now, it's that Fields is at his best when he goes hero mode and just decides I'm going to pull the ball down and I'm going to make the play that I want to make. And you could make the argument that this offense is poorly set up for that. That it's
Mhm.
better with a Trevor Simeon, with a Jimmy Garoppolo, with somebody who isn't trying to be a star, but is just going to get the ball out on time. You could make the argument that that's really boring, but it's absolutely clashing right now with Justin Fields and who he is as a player. And you could call it bad coaching, you can, but I know I'm frustrated because I would have expected Fields to look better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you're you're dead on. You know, like you talked about the nonlinear growth. You saw the steps against the Giants. You saw the steps last Sunday against the Vikings, and you thought like, well, he can carry. You know, if he can carry this over into Thursday, then we're feeling pretty good about it. It didn't happen, and so now it feels like we've taken a step back or 2 steps back or whatever. But, you know, there were still things to like,
Of
but
course.
it's just it's hard to just keep doing this like week in and week out. It feels like it's always the same things. It's always the same talking points. And, um, the offensive line was horrendous. They had some injuries.
Horrible.
Um, it does feel like the thing though, your point about Justin Fields, it feels like he plays his best when he's doing hero ball. That really does stand well to me because it just feels like when the chips are really down and they're really, really in a desperation mode, that's when we start to see him at his best, where he's just kind of running around doing playground stuff and just trying to find a way to make a play. And yeah, it doesn't make sense to me why we don't see that earlier in games. Why aren't we seeing those things sooner? And it's endlessly frustrating. And time feels like time's starting to run out. Like, we're now 6 games into the season, so a little over a third of the way there, and it just feels like we know what this team is. And maybe we get back to seeing some baby steps and some things going in the right direction, and the slow progress that we seem to see against New York and against Minnesota. But I don't know. It's very frustrating, and it's yet again another season of just bad offensive football in Chicago. And it just feels like it doesn't matter the regime, it doesn't matter the players, it doesn't matter the scheme. It just feels like Chicago can just never, ever get it right.
And I wanted to show Agent Mole's comment here because I actually think this is a very important point to speak to. Sam, I don't know if you're in the studio, but if we show anything, I'll show it here so that we're both talking about the same thing. Agent Mole says if they had any more talent on offense, he wouldn't need to hit hero mode to score any points. And Agent Mole, that I actually don't know if I agree with that. So on first down, when Washington was playing with 10 players, I don't know if you saw this, Sam. If you didn't, you can go back and watch it and it'll make you really sad. But Justin Fields takes the snap. He looks downfield. Downfield. They're at like the 5. So he looks into the end zone. He's waiting on 2 crossing routes and neither of them are there. But had he looked at his check down, he would have found that nobody was anywhere near David Montgomery, who is, by many Bears fans' accounts, literally the most talented player on offense right now. So if throwing to David Montgomery is getting you 8 to 10 yards per play, because daggum, it feels like it at some point, Sam, why aren't you looking there and giving your running back a chance? Because that's standard quarterbacking. Instead, he ran out of one of the rare clean pockets of the day and didn't find anything, and the Bears ended up another down back. It's the same argument that you could make, Sam, that says, well, Fields had a layup in the end zone in the second quarter. He missed it. And so then he had to go hero mode and bust through 2 tackles to get the ball to the half-yard line. And then they failed to convert on fourth down. It's the NFL. I mean, Sam, you see this in college football. You a college football fan?
Yes.
You don't get a chance to make a play every down. You don't. Right. If you do, your offense is incredible and you are smoking the other team. Sometimes it's second down and that's your best shot. And if you don't hit your best shot, or at least give yourself a chance to hit your best shot, you may not get another one later. And Agent Mole, that's not by any means to put you on the spot. I know you're not saying Fields is perfect. I'm more pointing out that there are a lot of people out there that see the fourth down should have been completion to Ihmir Smith-Marsette on 4th and 16. And they say, how can Fields play with receivers that can't even catch this pass? But what they won't talk about is that throw to Pettis, Sam, on what was it, 3rd and 11, way too low. Should have hit him in the hands. He should have turned it up field. It should have been 9 to 11 yards had he hit him square enough. Instead, it was a drop because it was way too low. And then they took a delay a game. It's a weird conversation right now where I want to be as objective as I can because I don't think my word means anything if I'm taking everything as pro Fields as possible. And I don't even want to make it sound like I'm as anti-Fields as possible, but I will say this, Sam, if there's something that I think is brutal about this roster construction, it's that Ryan Poles put the Bears in the best position he possibly could. And the way he did that was that he sold Justin Fields out. If Justin Fields is going to be the guy, he has to transcend a system that admittedly is really hard because unfortunately, Sam, the Bears just managed to lose to the Commanders. The Bears likely aren't going to beat the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Bills. The Patriots just blanked the Lions, who are the number one scoring or offense in football. And they probably they may not beat the Patriots. So you start to beg the question, Sam. Okay, if the Bears win 2 more games, if the Bears end up 4-13, well, do they have to stay with Justin Fields? Because Ryan Poles did not commit, right? You could even make the argument, if we were going to be really discussion-y, Sam, that part of what may have gotten Nagy fired is that he actually attempted to fix Mitch Trubisky. And he actually rode with Mitch Trubisky until there was no turning back. And I'm by no means saying that it's like the smartest call, right? And it's definitely not a very pro-fan call because they marketed Justin Fields as the reason to buy season tickets, and they put butts in seats with Justin Fields, and they may immediately turn their back on him and act like he's the problem. And he's definitely not, I think, the biggest problem on the offense. And it's cutthroat. But I suddenly find myself wondering, okay, they obviously didn't build an offensive line that was very specific to Fields. They obviously didn't build an offensive system that's exactly how you might use Justin Fields going forward. They obviously didn't surround Justin Fields with a bunch of receiver talent that just he has to be doing better because he's throwing to blank and blank and blank. His wide receiver one couldn't catch a pass on the goal line that should have won the game. I mean, there's no excusing that. But I don't know, Sam. It's hard for me to look at this roster right now and say that the Bears absolutely will commit to Fields, whether or not that's the right decision, because after games like this, you can feel it, right, Sam? That for some reason, the good games like Minnesota seem to mean less than the bad games like this one.
Yeah, I think that's the case, but I think I almost feel like that's always the case. You always get judged on your worst performance than your best performance a lot of times, especially when you're young and unproven, like Justin Fields currently is. And, that could be fair, that could be unfair, but it's the reality of the situation. And right now he's not showing us a whole lot to say that it's going to turn a corner and get way better. And I think that criticizing the decisions that Ryan Poles made is totally fair. He chose to invest where he chose to invest. He used the draft capital they had on the defense, which granted needed help, but you're right. It kind of hung his quarterback out to dry. And, maybe that was the way he viewed it was, well, if this kid's really great, he'll overcome all this and be great and it'll be fine. And if he doesn't, then I'll have a top 3 pick next year and can, do whatever I want with. So, I mean, maybe it's a win. But that remains to be seen. It's tough to cut bait with a quarterback after 2 years. I mean, obviously Josh Rosen is really the closest thing, and that was only 1 year, and a disastrous year at that. But and it was also just kind of a different situation. But yeah, I don't know where they're going, and I don't think anybody does either. Because I mean, again, I said it's getting late to say that the season's young. We're a third of the way through it, but at the same time, there are still 2/3 of the season left. Yep. And, stuff can happen, and this is a difficult system to pick up allegedly. And, we do see the flashes, but man, it's just getting harder and harder and you start to feel even more like conspiratorial if you're like digging through, well, there was the one thing that, it's like, I felt like that's what we all did with Mitch. It was like, well, there was the one thing he did on, such and such play. And if he could just do that like 3 or 4 more times a game. And, at some point you just got to realize that that's not the norm. And,
right.
And so like catching Washington with 10 men on the field or 12 men on the field and getting a free play and turning it into a huge touchdown was that turned the game, and it was a great play. Is a heads up play, but it still doesn't. They still lost the game. So
Right.
what are we talking about? I think everybody on Twitter was joking, like, when's the last time the Bears actually like capitalized with, like, when a team had too many men on the field? And
Right.
none of us remember, because it feels like it's so infrequent and it happens to us so many times when you play stupid Aaron Rodgers and stuff. So yeah, it's just a very frustrating situation all around.
And I mean, Sam, you picked the person that I wanted to talk about that I think matters here. Kind of. Like, okay, so everybody wants their quarterback to be Aaron Rodgers. I want my quarterback to be Aaron Rodgers. I love Aaron Rodgers, right? I think the complex part about this whole judgment is that Fields looks to me like the quintessential modern collegiate quarterback. Like most of these modern college quarterbacks, when you go around and look, right, they are touchdown to check down. I mean, we could call it big game hunter, but in many cases, they're kind of one read quarterbacks. Their one read is, can I throw that? And if not, I'm going to run it. They are superstars within that, and they are big play machines that aren't necessarily consistent, right? Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady are the opposite, right? They're that old guard NFL quarterback where mostly they kill you doing stuff that's really boring. Like, look at Aaron Rodgers this year. He's thrown like, I don't know how many touchdown passes, and the overwhelming majority of them are within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage that he actually threw and completed the pass, and the receiver just did the rest, right? West Coast offense. I mean, you've seen it for years, Sam, with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, where just because they can make the big play doesn't mean that's where they butter their bread, right? They butter their bread on it's 2nd and 8, and they get like 6 yards off of a completion to the flat. And then on 3rd and 2, they find somebody over the middle on a crosser or something like that. So can Fields learn to play that style of game? Because I do think that that's going to be harder for him. Things like, you know what? Hang on, Sam. Let's just, before I keep you up all night, you want to start the recording of the podcast?
Yeah.
Because we got a good thing going, but
Yeah,
we got to go to sleep.
Yeah, for sure.
What's going on, everybody? And welcome back to Bear With Me, a Chicago Bears podcast hosted by yours truly, Robert Schmitz, right here on the Windy City Rhode Island podcasting channel. And I am coming at you sad and I don't know. I don't have another word, Sam, but I'm here with Sam Householder, and we're going to be as upbeat as we can about a brutal Bears loss on Thursday Night Football, where it kind of feels like somehow all went wrong. And Sam, the weird part is it's not as if everything was going right before the game, and yet somehow is it because do you feel like we lost to a bad team? Because I did not look across the formation, so to speak, at the Commanders and feel like Carson Wentz earned the win that he got. What did you think?
Absolutely. First, thanks for having me on. And second, yes, absolutely. I kept waiting for the tide to turn because I just kept watching the game and thinking, okay, here's where Carson is going to give us the game. Like, you just kept waiting for Carson Wentz to be Carson Wentz, and it just didn't happen. Like, you get so used to seeing him make the bonehead mistake that costs him the game, and the reason why everybody always ends up so frustrated with Carson Wentz. And I live here in Indiana, and I'm lucky enough to live in northern Indiana, so I almost always have the Bears games, but I almost always have the Colts games too as my CBS game. So I watched a lot of Carson Wentz last year, and I can tell you, he had Colts fans pulling his hair out, and he's a very frustrating quarterback. And so all night tonight, it just, from the first snap, it was like, okay, we're going to get one off him, like whether it's an interception or a sack fumble. Like, it just seemed like it was going to be inevitable. It felt like we should get one. And I thought, hey, if the defense gets the takeaway and then takes it in the end zone, then, it almost felt like that was all we needed for it to be game over. Cause it never felt like Washington was going to score 14 points, and then they didn't. So
Oh yeah.
It a very frustrating game start to finish. But yeah, absolutely. Like, I never once thought like, oh, Washington is definitely the better team here. Their defensive line for sure. That's a very good defensive line, even without Chase Young. But boy, yeah, just another frustrating loss.
Yep. Boy, yeah, is a great way to put it because I feel like the worst part. Okay, so somehow this always seems to happen in prime time, Sam, where
Mhm.
the defense will have its best showing of the year and the
Mm,
offense will look so bad that I can't tell anybody I'm a Bears fan for the next few days or they'll
yep,
bring the game up.
yep,
And we had another one of those today where it felt like so against the Vikings game or against the Vikings, Alan Williams started the game out with a whole bunch of static looks, static cover one, static cover three, static cover two. And the Vikings obviously picked up on that, Sam, because it's hard to go 17 for 17 in a half and hit Justin Jefferson whenever you want to. There's got to be some scheme helping you out. But instead, holy moly, Alan Williams was willing to be aggressive. He broke a lot of his own tendencies, mugging
yep.
up on the line. Was there
Andrews,
any better example than that blitz at the start of the game where
right?
they mugged everybody up on the line of scrimmage? And if you've been watching this defense, you're thinking, okay, they are just never this aggressive. They're not coming. They're all dropping out. They're going to rush like maybe 4 or 5, and they didn't. They rushed like 8 or 9 players. Jaquan Brisker got home before that, like before Wentz had even hit the back of his drop, for crying out loud.
Yep,
It was sweet. As
yep,
much as like you're saying that Carson Wentz didn't necessarily give the game away, I personally struggle to look at a football game where the opposing offense earned about 9 points and
mhm,
had 6 gifted to them by Valus Jones and
right.
say to myself that that wasn't a game for the taking, which is why we have to talk about the offense, Sam,
Mhm,
because I don't know what's wrong. I want to know what's wrong. The All 22 is partially showing what's wrong. Kirk Herbstreit is partially showing what's wrong, but it does feel like there is a major conflict going on between how Matt Eberflus and Luke Getzey want this offense to be run and how Justin Fields wants to run an offense, because Justin Fields right now is playing like he has no understanding of what NFL Open is. And we've seen that for a little while, but it's not getting better. And that really bothers me, Sam, because you would expect that at some point, because okay, so to use an example, there was a 1st and 10 where Fields took a sack. And when he dropped back, he not only had Cole Kmet on a Sunday open throw to his left, but he had Darnell Mooney breaking in on to his right on an also Sunday open throw that Kirk Herbstreit highlighted in case you were watching the broadcast. The play after that, Sam, he threw with anticipation to a curling Mooney at about the 16-yard mark, and he threw to Mooney's outside. Mooney curled back to his inside, and the throw just looked way off. Whenever they are throwing open or like with anticipation, he and his receivers aren't on the same page. Whenever he isn't throwing with anticipation, he's just not throwing the ball because nobody's open enough for him to throw like that and find somebody. And then on random 3rd and 2s, he's taking his guy, Darnell Mooney, on a slot fade, which is a very hard throw to hit, Sam, no matter how open you are, instead of looking at a pick route that may very well come right over the middle and leave you one of the easiest throws in football. And so the slot fade doesn't fall. And then, Sam, somehow I have to talk about the fact that Fields let go of a ball so low, it didn't just hit the lineman's hand, it hit his face and
Yeah,
ends up as an interception on the 5-yard line. I mean, there is there is a lot of wrong to digest here.
yes, yeah,
It's not all on the quarterback. I'll be honest, it never is. Mitch Trubisky got benched in Pittsburgh right now, and it's not all Mitch's fault. Like,
right.
as much as we could pretend that Mitch isn't good enough, blah 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 blah. Like, Matt Canada's offense is not exactly a sparkling gem of awesomeness over there. Quarterbacks are rarely the entire problem, but quarterbacks have also been replaced for less, Sam. And I'm
Yep,
not saying that Fields is going to get replaced. That's not where I'm building. I'm saying we can't accept this as a good game because yardage totals are not. It took the last play of the game to almost beat a terrible, terrible Commanders team. And I thought that this offense looked like they had many more points in them today. And it felt like the quarterback was a primary reason that we didn't end up with points.
yeah. I think that that's a fair assessment. I mean, if you want to take the optimistic look, you can say that they were inside the 5 like 2 times in the first quarter. They should have had a 14-0 lead. Um, but yeah, at first you see the ball pop up in the end like that, you think, oh well, somebody tipped it, but then on the replay, it's like No, the quarterback just threw it right into a dude's head, which is ridiculous. And then, yeah, the next time, like you talked about, I think that was before we were recording, he missed a guy and then broke for the goal line, got tackled at the half-yard line or whatever. And then they get stood up on fourth down because, myriad reasons. The offensive line's bad. The play call wasn't great. They didn't have, a lead blocker in there, all the things. But, yeah, the offense is definitely a problem, and not just Fields himself. I mean, then he misses, an open tight end, and it feels like it should be,
Oof.
everybody's talking about missing the layups, and it's like that felt like a layup. And look, I get it. Like, we see quarterbacks miss that's a fade, right? Like you see quarterbacks miss it a lot, but boy, it just feels different when this offense is needing for anything to glom onto for, as far as hope, as far as, a spark. And it's like it was right there, and it just like went right over his fingertips, and then it was just so deflating.
Oh yeah. I mean, Sam, I'll pick up where you left off. It's okay to say it. Bears fans, it is very easy for us to act like scoring a touchdown is a massive accomplishment, and it is. But normal teams are scoring closer to 20, 21 points per game. So when the Bears miss a layup touchdown, that's a normal score in the normal NFL. Bad teams will find a way into the end zone. And that was a really nice play call. There were a lot of people on Twitter saying that it was super innovative. It's actually, I mean, it's not that uncommon, as a matter of fact. Like, when you're running a Shanahan style offense, the fake jet, fake handoff throw to the end zone is like a common red zone call. It's like why leak, what they ran in the postseason. But you can't miss that throw when you're also missing the other throws, right? When Lamar Jackson misses multiple throws deep and then finds a way to crawl back and beat Cincinnati, that's something that we'll give him a pass for, because he's shown he can do it, and that was an off day, right?
Right. Right.
With Fields, it feels like the bad days are starting to outnumber the good days, where we are starting to hang maybe a little bit too much, Sam, on that potential word P, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Instead of
absolutely.
looking at results. I mean, look at what the Bears did on the ground today, right? Velus Jones, David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, all of them ran for over 4.5 yards per carry, just
Mhm.
not even taking Fields into account. It's not like the running game was playing poorly. It's not like the offensive line was really rough, but we knew they'd be rough. And I felt like, Sam, I haven't seen the all 22, because honestly, Prime Vision just doesn't look good on my TV, and I didn't have it in me to watch the all 22 through this game. But what bothered me is that while Fields there's a stat out there that Fields got pressured 18 times in this game. It was the highest rate of his career that he got pressured. But Sam, we're watching the same game. Fields isn't releasing the ball under 2 seconds almost ever, and it's definitely not if it's not a called screen. And so I find myself wondering how much of that pressure is because Fields is just holding on to the ball, waiting for like OSU open, instead of just throwing the ball and letting his receiver not catch it if he's not up to the task. I mean, there's some of this stuff where it feels like Fields is kind of caught between, but it feels like a mess out there. And again, I can't sit here and pretend it's all on the quarterback. But if you saw what I saw, I feel like this was the Bears receivers' best day this year. I thought they were open more often than they've just about ever been. I thought that the running backs were surprisingly good. I thought Luke Getsy gave Fields this game and said, "Go win this one for us, kid." And we ended up just like we did, or when we did this in 2019 with Mitch Trubisky, with an offense that couldn't score more than 10 points, for
Yep.
crying out loud. And
Mhm.
maybe it's the Bears fan in me, but Sam, I'm getting sick of it.
No,
Like, there's got to
absolutely.
be a quarterback out there that can score 15 points, and I don't have to feel like it's an accomplishment.
Yes. Yeah, I would think. I mean, we see, uh, you know, uh, I mean, I guess it's a bad example because it's the first one that came to my mind. But Skylar Thompson, I mean, he put up 19 points. It was still a blowout, but um, we see Geno Smith is playing out of his mind. Like, there's quarterbacks all over the league that are putting up points on a consistent basis, and somehow Chicago is just like allergic to it. And it's almost comical. Like, I found this tweet from Brad Spielberger, PFF at PFF Brad on Twitter. Bears in goal to go tonight. 11 plays, 7 yards, 1 interception, 0 points. It's ridiculous. Like, to run 11 plays inside the 10-yard line and you gain 7 yards and come away with 0 points. That is very, very difficult to do. And yeah, it's that tweet to me just like encapsulated this game. It was like the Bears could move the ball. They got inside the red zone. They, were putting pressure on Washington, and then they would just give it up, whatever it was. Yep. Yeah. And yeah, it's frustrating. And then, the other thing, if you want to transition, the other thing is I feel like we're all going to have to see the stupid Carson Wentz blocking, almost decleating, just Roquan Smith for the next
Poor
7
Roquan.
days. It was already on my Instagram feed on the official NFL Instagram account, and I'm like, well, here we go. This is just going to be everywhere this week. And I mean, granted, in some ways, I mean, Ryan Poles can just play it on a loop the next time Roquan wants to come in for a negotiation meeting. But yeah, I mean, look, maybe we should all be glad that they didn't pay him $100 million this offseason, but there was a lot of embarrassing moments for the Bears, whether the quarterback was hitting a player in the helmet with the ball at the line of scrimmage, or whether it was, they're supposedly the supposed star linebacker getting decleated by a freaking mediocre quarterback. And then it just goes from there, because there were lots of other stuff too. I mean, let's not forget the ineligible man downfield on a screen. That's like, it seemed like that should have you not practiced a screen before, like no brainer. But leave it to the Bears, and then another muff punt that really is what cost them.
Horrible. I mean, Sam, I will actually, so physical mistakes are hard, right? If anybody out there watches baseball, nobody catches 100% of the pop flies hit their way. Like, these things happen, and punts are hard to catch. The ball spins and goes all over the place. The fact that Velus fell to his knees and still attempted to catch the ball, which bounced straight onto his shoulder and over his head, was like Curb Your Enthusiasm goofy. Like, it felt as if the way that he went about it gave him no chance to catch the punt. And then you sit there wondering, Sam, okay, what do you do here if you can't even catch these things? Like, he's a 3rd-round pick. He's an old rookie. You definitely are hoping that if he's going to make any contribution, he should make it quickly. And he's contributing. The Bears are now 2-3, partially because Velus didn't give the offense key chances.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I liked what I saw from him on offense tonight. He got a decent amount of snaps. I kind of like him as a receiver. I like the play he scored on last against the Vikings, and then I liked a lot of what I saw tonight. He's shifty. He's really good in space. He can make guys miss. He seems like he's got pretty good vision. He's pretty good at following his blockers on the screens and stuff, to my eyes. And so, there's things to like there, but then you just see the special teams and you're just like, man, what is going on? And, maybe it's an experience thing. He's, it's only his 2nd full game. I think he played 2 weeks ago, but very limited to just the special teams, which is the last time he muffed. But so maybe it's a case of the yips, or maybe it's just the rookie learning curve, because he did miss a decent chunk of the preseason and the first couple games with his quad thing or his hamstring. The Bears have had so many injuries, I can't keep them all straight, and they all seem.
I don't blame you.
So but whatever it was, whatever the muscle was in his leg that was hurt. But so yeah, it might be a learning curve thing. I hope it is. but he seems like a likable kid. And, like I said, I like what I see on offense. And so maybe it's just a case of, all right, fine, just focus him as a receiver and get him in, for these screens and these jet sweeps and these,
Right.
passes or whatever pop passes, whatever they call those, and be done with the returner thing. Cause, yeah. And, I see some people in the comments saying like, well, the turf got him and stuff. And like, yes, that it did kind of look like, depending on, it was either the ball shifted late in flight or because both can be true.
Both can be true.
Sure. And I'm not, trained. I don't have the trained all 22 eye that my co-host or my host here has, but you see right as the ball's coming down, it's like maybe it shifted a little bit, and then he tries to shift to get under it, and it seemed like he kind of lost his footing. But like you said, then it's just dive out of the way and let it go over your head, or it's, he still had time to bail, and he just tried. I don't know what he was trying to do, catch it with his shoulder, and it just did not work. You're not David Tyree, buddy. Like, you're not making a helmet catch on a flipping punt. Like, so I don't know, but I feel bad for the kid because you could see him coming off the field. They cut to him, and it's like, it's like I said, it's his third NFL game.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's, you hope this doesn't define his career or anything, but
Well,
right now it's just not good, and it's not helping the Bears win games at all. So
no. And speaking, Sam, not to bring it all the way back to Fields, this whole podcast isn't necessarily going to be all about Fields, but I just have a feeling that we've got 11 days, if I got that right, because they go from Thursday to Monday against a Bill Belichick defense, which is a great step forward for in terms of defensive just difficulty. But another young guy that we literally saw on the sidelines because they just could not stop panning to Fields to talk about his yoga breathing in the middle of a rough game. I do want to point out that, like, we've given Fields his thorns, so to speak, like the opposite of roses. That's where I'm going with that. Like, the offensive line played really badly, and the receivers continue to show that they aren't super good. I want to make it so clear that it's not as if Fields is doing nothing right. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Fields, in many cases, is being put in an incredibly tough situation to succeed. And then when he plays the game his way, he'll crack off a huge 35-yard run. He'll make a third down throw into the end zone that hits Dante Pettis in the hands, despite him getting interfered with. And honestly, it's super impressive. Like, the physical talent is absolutely there. There's no question that Fields can do it. And there's no better example than the play that they caught the Washington Commanders defense on, where Fields then placed a just about perfect ball 40 yards downfield in the end zone for a touchdown to Dante Pettis. Like, there are some sweet moments with Fields. I don't want to pretend like somehow this offense is all Fields' fault. The complication, Sam, that I feel like we're looking at right now is that it feels like, I said this in post game, I'll say it again. This feels like we're watching a fighter that is a great brawler, can land some nasty haymakers, uppercuts, hooks, like hitting some huge punches. But as far as the technical fighting goes, he's struggling to land his jabs, the easy stuff. Fields, in a sentence, is making the easy things look incredibly hard in the NFL, and he's making the incredibly hard things look extremely easy. Now, there may be part of that is 100% on Luke Getsy. I mean, one of my favorite accounts on Twitter, it's Honest NFL. He mostly tweets about the Eagles, but he tweets about all kinds of analysis. He was irate, incensed, Sam, at the idea of what Luke Getsy was doing. He said that he normally doesn't get the chance to watch Bears games, but watching this game, he thought, in his own words, that Luke Getsy looked like the worst offensive coordinator in the NFL. And that, like, he was shooting shots. In his words, Justin Fields has superpowers, and it's like taking a water gun into war when you left your machine gun at home. So for anybody out there that thinks this isn't Fields' fault, this is entirely Getsy's fault, he's being coached horribly. No, you're not the only one. Like, Nate Tice loves Justin Fields. JT O'Sullivan generally loves Justin Fields. It's not like I don't love Justin Fields myself. I just can't look at a result like this and end up happy about it, because either he's being coached poorly to not throw some of these Sunday open throws, or he's not catching the coaching. And either way, it's disappointing. But I mean, I want to point out that sometimes, Sam, it can sound a lot like I want Andy Dalton at quarterback instead of somebody as talented as Justin Fields. And I want to just point out that I'm conflicted too, because there are plenty of times, I'm sure you feel the same way, where on 3rd and 2, that slot fade that we already talked about, just take the crosser over the middle, man. Like,
Right.
if it's a man situation, you're gonna get a man pick. Like, you can make that throw. The throw in the end zone that got picked off, just put it over the offense. Like, put it over, like, get it over the defensive line, for crying out loud. Like, Fields has crazy talent. It feels like the mistakes he's making should be easy,
Mhm.
right? And something's wrong. It
Yeah.
can't all be Fields' fault. We have to lay some of the blame at Fields. Braxton Jones looked awful tonight. Fifth
Yeah.
round pick or not, he was struggling,
Mm.
but it's a mess out there. I don't know. Sam, where are you? Not you interpreting Ryan Poles, not you interpreting like the Bears fandom, but like Sam Householder. What are you feeling about quarterback, about this team going forward? This obviously isn't a team built for today or tomorrow. But where are you feeling on the like confidence scale?
I really don't have much confidence anymore. I mean, honestly, the schedule it gets a lot more daunting very quickly here, and it already looks a lot harder than it seemed it was going to be in August. And honestly, I really kind of thought like tonight was a have to have game to feel anything going forward with the tough stretch they have coming up. And so now you really question, well, when's the next winnable game? And it's certainly not the Patriots. And, I don't have the schedule in front of me even, but it's just one of those things where I don't know what there is to get positive about. Um, the quarterback situation isn't getting any better. Yeah, so the next few games at New England, at Dallas, host the Dolphins, and if they have like Tua and um, Tyreek back and everything by then, it's like that. What's that? And then you get the Lions, okay, maybe, and then you're at the Falcons and at the Jets. So like, there's a little relief coming, but that's three, arguably four, with what we've seen of the Lions offense, really tough games coming up. And so I don't know what there is to be excited about. I think that, you know, preseason, everybody was like, oh, we all talked a big game, but we always do. Oh, the wins don't matter. The wins don't matter. It's just about seeing Justin Fields develop. Well, now we're not seeing Justin Fields develop and they're losing. So what what is there then, and these flashes of brilliance, these so you're saying there's a chance, endings to these games, like it's fine in the moment, but it still leaves you feeling pretty empty afterwards. So you know i, I like the flashes. I'm gonna keep looking for the positives and the flashes and keep hoping that against hope it's starting to feel like that Fields can develop, but he does truly have a terrible supporting cast. I think that all that we heard from the national media in August, and everybody in Chicago was like, "Well, I don't know, we're not that bad," and everybody's saying this is a historically bad team and a historically bad offense. And it's like, well, I think that's bearing out that they were closer to right than we were, that this was a bunch of, overachievers or, cast offs or whatever. They were cast offs for a reason. And this offensive line is beyond horrible. And, they had some injuries tonight and had to bring in like Michael Schofield, who they had like waived and was on the practice squad at one point. And, and you still have a very bad starting center, and then your rookie 5th round pick, who you trot out at left tackle, the most important position on the offensive line. So, I mean, he had his worst game. So, yeah, I mean, give me something to be excited about. I don't see it. I like watching David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, carry 6 dudes for first downs in Montgomery's case, or in Herbert's case, make a couple cuts and run for, what was that, like 56 yards or whatever. Like, that was pretty sweet. But yeah, just like, I'm going to get 5 plays a game and the rest of it is just going to be pain. There's not a lot to be happy about right now. And there's not a lot to look forward to.
And honestly, the funny part about it, Sam, is that I think last week was the ideal. Okay, so look, I need to I say this almost every podcast. I need to say it again. I am not a super nerd that thinks you should always be tanking. But
Mhm.
when you change coaches and you put $63 million on of credit card debt on this year's cap, and you trade every fundamentally decent player on the roster or let them go and instead replace them with youth, yeah, it's the right year to lose,
Mhm.
right? It's the
Mhm.
one year that you could suck it up and say, you know what, losses do ultimately help us. They get us closer to one of those the guys, no matter what position it is. Jamar Chase was not a player that the Bengals got because they went 8-9. They had their quarterback get hurt. It was awful. They got Jamar Chase. Their hurt quarterback came back. They went to a Super Bowl. The math isn't that hard on some of these things. You get
Yeah.
a top 10 player, they change your team in many
Yeah.
cases. Rams got a top 10 player named Aaron Donald, one player before the Bears, and suffice to say, he changed their team. They don't always change teams, but they can change teams, and I will take it every time. And the Vikings game last week was the perfect loss.
No,
Like,
absolutely. Like, if the Bears had lost that way tonight, I think that this is an entirely different podcast and conversation.
of course,
Yeah, I didn't mean to stop your rant, but for real, if Fields comes out and completes 70% of his passes for 250 yards, has 2 touchdowns, and then say it still has 1 interception, but whatever, and then you're kind of looking at it and going, uh, you know, okay, they lost, but this is what we wanted, see
yep.
more development. It's not the case.
No, the big problem, like you're saying, wins and losses are irrelevant. So why are we mad? Is it because we lost? No, it's because we didn't see the development that we wanted to see. Now, some development that we did need, or that we did get to see, Kyler Gordon is finding it. He, in my opinion, so I saw this on the Vikings tape, and if I had had more time, if we didn't have a Thursday game, I was going to put more stuff on, like more stuff about this on Twitter. But Kyler Gordon is an insane athlete. Kyler Gordon looks like a user-controlled creative player in Madden that is faster than everybody, but also like a user-controlled creative player, he barely knows how to play his position. But man, oh man, every time he shows any semblance of the right idea of where a play is or like where the play is going, boom, like boom, it's
Yeah.
awesome. And he looks fast. He
Mhm.
looks quick. He looks like everything that you would hope that he will be.
Yeah.
And I think that's exciting. The only problem, like you're saying, is that when you look downhill at what's going on in the rest of the schedule, like the Bears schedule does not get easier. This was a great day for a big offensive showing because they get a Belichick defense next week who is historically good at just stymieing or rookie quarterbacks. After that, they get the Cowboys, who the
I
Cowboys
don't want any part of Micah Parsons on Braxton Jones, or
exactly.
like,
I
I forfeit the game. I don't even know that I want to watch it. Like,
I had to go through exactly what you already talked about, Sam, because I'm being a bit redundant just because I wanted to say that if you had Micah Parsons go up against the entire offensive line by himself, how many snaps do you think the whole 5 offensive line wins against him? Like, he's playing that dude good. And
yeah,
so the road gets tougher where when we start saying to ourselves, okay, we gotta wait 3 weeks, but then we get the Lions. And then if he doesn't play well against the Lions, like what do we do? And
right,
and that's what gets so complicated about this, right?
yeah,
And it's gonna be interesting to see where this goes. Let's be blunt. No matter how frustrated anybody is, Fields
mhm,
isn't getting benched.
mhm.
Like, we've
No,
got
it's not.
12
That
more games.
talk.
And Sam, all it takes is Fields having a miraculously good game against Bill Belichick's Patriots to
Mhm.
flip a lot of people's
No,
opinions.
absolutely. And,
Oppo- yeah,
I mean, it could happen, but I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't feel like that's the likely outcome, and it is what it is. You can't change the schedule, but yeah, thinking about this oncoming slate, it's disgusting. And maybe after that Cowboys game, I just flipped over and looked at the calendar. I'll come on and we can just talk about the Mexican Grand Prix because that's the same day, and we'll just
right.
talk Formula One instead of Bears football because it's another sport we like and it's not this. I don't want to. I want no part of Micah Parsons against this Bears offensive line,
Right.
and so yeah. To bring it back to tonight though, like this was a game you felt like they had to win to at least sort of pad the win column, but also then you can kind of feel good and warm and fuzzy about the steps that thought we saw against Minnesota. And now it's back to what's coming, and that's when it gets scary because now it's like, well, now we're not seeing development. We're not really seeing steps forward. They can't beat bad teams. What are they going to do against mediocre to good and great teams? Not a lot, I would think.
Yep. And it's seriously the hardest part about just deciphering everything is that it's not, this is the weird kind of game where we don't get much to say about the defense because why does it matter? Like
Mm,
I would love to say it does, right? I would love to talk about the fact that I think Nick Morrow is a surprisingly solid signing, about the fact that Eddie Jackson is playing unreal football, about the fact that the cover two defense is actually kind of coming together. And if Alan Williams comes out of the ultra conservative turtle shell that he's spent his whole career in and gets a little aggressive here and there, this defense gets surprisingly good, surprisingly quick. I don't get to talk about somebody who should be like comeback player of the year nomination. That's a bit tongue in cheek, but Kendall Vildor has been unbelievable,
no,
Sam.
absolutely.
Like,
Yeah,
c-
I mean, they might have found this at least a solid starter. I mean, he's playing above average right now, but even if he regresses a little bit to average, I think we would all take it from where he was a year or two ago.
sure, 100%. And we could talk about any of this if the schedule didn't look exactly like it does, if the story of the season wasn't about the young quarterback. And the hardest part about all of it, would the offensive line help? Of course it would. Like they are playing terribly.
Hmm.
Would better receivers help? Of course they would. They
Hmm.
aren't playing well either. Like
Hmm.
when the receivers get chances to catch balls, they're making huge mistakes. And yet, it feels like the quarterback position isn't quite get I don't know. It's so bizarre, right? Because this is like I'm Sam, if you can think of a decent metaphor for this, I'm trying to figure it out. It feels as if a lot of Fields' success is coming where generally speaking nobody expects quarterbacks to succeed, like the 35-yard run. A great example. I'm not anticipating that. I'm not drafting a quarterback expecting them to do that. A lot of the things that Fields is doing incredibly well are straight up wow plays, and
Yeah,
they are phenomenal. And
I don't know that
just
I have a metaphor for it, but it's kind of like I just mentioned, when we were talking pre-show, is like it. It's when his back is against the wall. You call it hero ball. Like when that is when it feels like we get his best ball, but unfortunately, it's in the last 2 minutes when they're down a touchdown, or and tonight it was 5 points, or it's on Sunday when they're down 21-3, and then suddenly it's like, oh, then he's like able to like kind of rise up to the moment, and so he has that big game ability, that gamer
of
mentality.
course.
But where is it the rest of the time?
And the worst part is that we've okay, so we talked a little bit about, or I was going on a rant about Aaron Rodgers pre-show, but I will bring up the comparison, not because everybody should be Aaron Rodgers, that's just not the point. But for those huge plays, for the 40-yard bombs to Dante Pettis, for the 35-yard touchdowns, for the 52-yard almost touchdown run against the Vikings to really stick, you have to throw the ball into the flat on time. You have to hit the back of your drop and rifle the ball into an 8-yard slant. You have to do a lot of the things that he did do against the Vikings. To say that he can't do it is to lie. To
Mhm.
say that he always does it is to also lie, because Braxton Jones, he hit that 40-yard bomb against Dante Pettis with Jones in his lap. That was such a tough throw, Sam. Like, in the world of, is what he has shown us that he can do harder than the stuff I'm asking him? I would have told you yes 2 years ago, and here we are. Like, throwing some of these over the middle dig routes that are, I wouldn't call them wide open. Equinemius St. Brown is getting covered about a second and a half after he breaks, which is pretty quick in the world of the NFL. But if Fields pumped the ball to him on time, you'd hit a few more 9 to 12-yard passes that would continue to extend drives. And again, that would change the way the defense is playing you to open up more. It's part of where Lamar Jackson has really excelled as a passer, or Kyler Murray has really excelled as a passer, because they hit the league and they ran as much as they could to try to open seams. And when they got those seams open, they started to hit passes within those to create a feedback loop where when you play Lamar as a passer, he beats you with his legs. When you play Lamar as a runner, he beats you with his arm. And right now, Fields needs to be a superhero to make a play. And it feels as if he's not getting any of his success within the offense. And whenever you say that, the offensive coordinator is just as equal, just as much to blame, in my opinion, as the quarterback is himself. But it does cast a little bit of doubt on everybody. And we knew the Bears weren't going to be good. They came into this week 30 or 27th in points per game. So it's
Mhm.
not like they were doing really horribly. But there comes a point where we're just going to have to see what happens. We can't say anything super declarative, but Sam, I'm bummed
No,
because,
and
yeah.
yeah, I am too. Honestly, like my biggest hope at the beginning of the season was that they would start slow. They're starting a bunch of rookies and young players in new schemes, and I thought, okay, they're going to take their lumps through the first 3-4 games, but then they should start to find their footing, hopefully, with a little bit of experience under their belt, and slowly get better as the season goes on. That was what I thought. And it's like, I kind of thought that was the route we were going after the Giants and the Vikings. But then this week, it's like, no, this is just the same. They just happen to play worse defense on this past Sunday or something, like it's a weird thing.
Yep. And it doesn't help anything that when you talk about worse defenses, it's like, oh, look at that. I mean, Sam, I'm going to say something that is about to be a real kick in the chest, probably.
Mhm.
So, do you remember the moments you were most hopeful about Mitch? You probably do. And I don't have quite have time because it's a podcast to let you think about it. And
Mhm.
if you categorize them from 2017 to 2020, it was when the Detroit Lions visited the Bears in Soldier Field. Mitch would go off. It's not that he didn't go off in Detroit, but he was here and there, right?
Mhm.
When the Lions visited the Bears, he would go crazy. And Fields had his best game last week against a Vikings defense that's bottom 30 or that's bottom of the league in rushing the passer, that's bottom
Mhm.
of the league in covering the pass. And I don't want to sit here and have to search for correlation as somebody who's trying his best to be as objective as possible. As Fields heads into playing better defenses, I'm definitely looking back and saying the Texans are not a good defense. I understand they tore Trevor Lawrence apart, but Fields had a horrible day against them. The 49, or let's not use the 49ers, the Packers are a very good defense. Fields had a very bad day against them. The Vikings are not a good defense. Fields had a pretty good defense day against them. The Giants are a meh defense, and Fields had a medium to good defense or day against them. He
Mhm.
goes up against a bunch of defenses from here on out that is like that are going to test him really, really hard.
Mhm.
And I hope that he's up for the challenge, but it could be tough football to watch. Just as a Bears fan who doesn't like it when the team, I think you probably feel this way. I don't like it. It's not as simple as I don't like it when the Bears lose. I don't like it when the Bears don't play up to the team that I think they are. Right. And I
Mhm.
think what I'm most disappointed about is that the offense deeply disappointed me on all levels. I knew they'd struggle against the pass rush, and yet Fields didn't have his lowest time to throw game of the season, which I think he should have because these corners were leaving everything underneath open.
Yeah,
And it's it's not that Fields didn't make some sweet throws. If anything, I could make the argument, Sam, it's the plays Fields didn't make, the boring, dull stuff. I mean, if you went back and you watched a highlight reel of some of Tom Brady's most important plays, you might actually walk away from it, Sam, saying, people think this guy's the greatest of all time, and
no,
yet he keeps winning games because he does
yes,
the boring stuff, you
exactly.
know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, but to your point, if you took the score and clock off of the the screen and just watched Tom Brady with no like crowd noise or anything, you and so you had no context of what was going on in the game at the moment. Yeah, a lot of his biggest plays are pretty boring because yeah, he takes the easy stuff. He's one of the best ever at just moving the chains and moving methodically down the field. And yeah, so in some ways I could almost go for a game from Fields where the stat line isn't crazy, but he just strings together a bunch of first downs and long drives without, huge shot plays and just takes the layups like we keep talking about. So that's where we're at.
Yep. And I'll be honest, I want to see Fields stop taking hits. If because you mentioned moving the chains. The Bears moved the chains a ton. And throughout this season, Fields has converted a ton of plays with his feet to gain key first downs. I don't want to take that away from him. I worry about how that scales going forward, but we're just going to have to wait and see. Do you have any final thoughts on the game before we close the book on the podcast?
No, like I said, it's just a very disappointing game. And it's unfortunate the Bears couldn't steal a win, and instead they snatched snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. It seems like, and we're just talking about another game of literal inches of just coming up short once again.
Yep. And I think the worst part for me, Sam, it's not to directly disagree with you, but you mentioned stealing a win. I feel like the Bears were easily the better team this evening. I think their defense looked better. I think their offense looked better. I thought David Montgomery was running all over them. I thought that the response from Khalil Herbert shucking a tackle and bolting 64 beautiful yards down the field was phenomenal to come back from a huge pick at the goal line. And yet somehow the Bears got to the goal line three separate times and came away with a fat 0 points. They
Yeah.
ended up needing every point because they only lost by 5 in a 12-7 game. And so I am frustrated. I am curious, sure, to see the all 22, but I don't think it's going to show anything that we don't already know. And it is going to cast a lot of doubt on everything from the offensive line to the quarterback to the receivers, sure, and just make us wonder, what is this team going to look like in 2023? Because if anything, if there's anything positive to say, it is that, wow, the whole, like, everything's open. I don't know if there's an option that isn't on the table right now for Ryan Poles, but this is the team that in plenty of ways he built, and I don't know if I like it as it's currently constructed. But hey, Sam, thanks so much for coming on. What can folks be watching WCG for you?
Well, I'll have my game review stock up, stock down, looking at 3 players who did well and 3 who didn't, and obviously I do the game previews and my weekly betting column, and I'll be on the next Sunday live stream. I don't know if we're going to do it this Sunday with no game to talk about. Well, I guess we could talk about Thursday, but you know what I mean. No game to preview. So, but Steve and I got to decide on that. But that's where people can find me.
Thanks so much for coming on, Sam.
Thank you.
And I guess Yeah, and then I guess I'll probably edit in something that says because I just completely lost a handle on that. But so thanks so much for coming on, Sam. It's a
That's
dreary evening, but we've got plenty more going on this season. So feel free to stick with us on Second City Gridiron, on Windy City Gridiron, and on the Windy City Gridiron Podcasting Network for more Bears analysis as we tromp through the rest of the season. Hey, nothing's over. As grim as a day like today might be for different reasons, whether you're mad at the receivers, whether you're mad at Luke Getsy, whether you're mad at Matt Eberflus, whether you're mad at Justin Fields, whoever it may be, the certainly Valus Jones might make that category if I didn't mention him already. We will be here to break it down. So thank you so much for listening, and bear down. Thanks so much for bearing with me. And we're clear. Sam, if you got to go, you got to go. I'll stay here for a little bit. It's like almost midnight. So, I mean, it's on a work night too.
1 o'clock for me.
Mhm.
So,
So if you got to leave, you got to leave, and I'll catch you later.
yep. Thanks so much.
You bet. Thanks so much, Sam.
Yep. Bye.
Okay, so I'll finish out a little bit. Steven, if you're still here, I tried to work the conversation to Getsy within the podcast to answer your question. I don't know whether I'm impressed with Getsy in some cases. I got to be honest with you, because I do think, okay, so let me phrase it this way, right? I think if the Bears traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, this offense would look a lot better. I think Jimmy Garoppolo sucks. So it's not as if I'm about to try to pretend that just because they're building the offense out to make a certain style of quarterback look better, that also means that the offense is well schemed. I mean, this is a very common offense that the Bears are trying to run, pieces of it anyways. I wanted to see them expand on their empty sets, but I'm also a crazy aggressive person. I think that they've got a conservative head coach that doesn't want their quarterback to throw the game away. I think that, okay, so I've got a joke for you guys. Well, it's a statement kind of embedded in a joke. There's like a known I don't want to call it a fact, but like everybody's heard the joke before that like if the government is finally on to something, then everybody else is like 3 years ahead, right? Or they generally show up late to everything. I feel like getting to this Shanahan style run scheme right now. There's a lot of things that like the Shanahan style run scheme that they've done, I still think it rules. The problem is that the Shanahan style play action passing game, rollouts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like teams are just getting used to it. Like Akusai, I think, who's in here, and I know Reinhardt mentioned this, like that you can't just run bootlegs ad nauseum anymore because teams are like ready and raring to take that stuff down. People have been now running bootlegs for almost 5 or 6 years. They're starting to shut things down. The second one wasn't quite a question, Steven. So help me understand the question, because you said Ryan Poles misjudged on offensive line and wide receiver. Throw in Luke Getsy's questionable play calling. It's a horrendous situation for Fields. That's the whole statement. So, like, help me understand the question, because I do think it's a horrendous situation. I also think, so let me use a silly example. I don't think any rookie quarterback should ever be playing, right? I think that if I learned anything from not just Fields, not just Mitch, all of it, I think that rookie quarterbacks have no idea what's going on. I think that they are massively limited in what they can take in a single offseason, like a training camp, basically, because they do draft prep until May. Then they get from May to August, 3 months to establish some chemistry with their NFL wide receivers, to adjust to the NFL state of play, to do everything, right? And yet somehow Bailey Zappi is doing all the stupid little things that I want to see Fields do, and Kenny Pickett is seeing a rusher coming at his face and ditching the ball to the flat, which is what you would expect these NFL quarterbacks to do. And I don't think Bailey Zappi or Kenny Pickett is better than Justin Fields, and they're not close from a talent perspective. So what's going on is what I start to look at. It is a horrible situation for Fields, but I don't think Zappi, say what you will, his OC is Matt Patricia, for crying out loud. That's not good. His best receiver is like Kendrick Bourne. Like the Patriots are not a good team. They have a sweet head coach, right? But like McDaniels isn't the offensive coordinator anymore, you know? And so you start to look at this and you're like, why? Okay, so is Zappi outplaying Fields? Well, he's definitely not doing any of the sexy stuff that Fields is awesome at. These like rollouts turned into runs that are super sweet. Like that's like Zappy's never gonna do that ever. The what is the word? Like the huge touchdown throw to Dante Pettis. I don't think Zappy's making that throw. Certainly not if he's getting bumped, right? But the little things, like somebody said, what Minshew's doing. Like the worst part is, okay, so Reinhardt goofed on me earlier, and I'm not scrolling up to show it again. Is saying that like the Foles video's back. I do love me a quarterback that does all the dumb little things. Like I do. I mean, I was this close to making a Derek Carr video. He's like the best backup quarterback ever. Like you could make an argument that Rodgers is the best backup quarterback ever because he kind of, if you think about it, plays like a backup quarterback or like a game manager. He's just perfect. Like he's also unafraid. He's also incredibly aggressive. He takes what the defense gives you, and then he also takes what the defense gives you downfield. But the weird part about this, because like James Wallace, it's not that I can disagree with you. I mean, I don't know. Could another quarterback have fared as well as Justin Fields has with this team? Statistically speaking, Justin Fields is the worst passer in football. Like, period. From a yardage perspective. And that's a stupid metric. I think that everybody agrees that's a stupid metric. But if they could get a short game going, like you're saying, like you're mentioning Raging Oracle, like they're gonna get a more functional offense. Russell Wilson struggles with a short game, and you've still got to play one, or you won't get the rest of the Russell Wilson stuff, right? Like at no point is anybody sitting here trying to say that Justin Fields sucks because like we can't be done. The guy started 17 games to have anybody out there saying that this is the same voice that just dunked on this game for like 40 minutes. It shouldn't sound like whiplash. If you know me at all, you know that I can be really critical when I think I need to be really critical. And I thought this game was a primetime showing of all of the red flags that anybody's worried about Justin Fields about. It was also one football game. And so if he does succeed against Bill Belichick's Patriots, if he does succeed against what's left of the Dolphins, like if he does succeed against a lot of these really good defenses, he can redeem a lot of this immediately. And we'll be talking about how much he grew, like without any question. I mean, it's tough, but you can't quite live off of exclusively intermediate and deep throws. And you definitely have to throw on time because okay, so if you don't believe me, go go boot up Madden, a video game, right? And whenever your receivers break, I want you to see what happens when you throw it on all pro or better, one Mississippi after they've broken. Like you have to throw when the receiver breaks. If you've played, I mean, it sounds stupid that I'm talking about a video game. I'm really trying to help us all understand what I'm talking about here because absolutely, Brano, what like Darnell Mooney has to make that catch. No doubt. Absolutely. You'd hope that Dante Pettis pulls that crazy one in that he was able to wrist out there and make the play on. For sure. But I will point out that I don't think we need to necessarily be praising Justin Fields for having to beat the Commanders on the last play of the game. And before anybody comes out here and says, okay, come on, Robert, like he can only play the team that's in front of him. Like, come on, what are you talking about? What do you really think that Fields has to score 40 points with this offense? No, but I would like I'd like more of these plays to look like the ending to last week's game did. Like let your team let you down for crying out loud. And to some degree Fields did. Like I need to point out this is a complex issue. This isn't just something that you can be one and done on, right? You can't necessarily say it's all Fields' fault. That's why Mooney dropped the ball. Stupid, right? Like exactly like Jay Sanders said, Fields didn't fumble a punt. He didn't. But also, if you lose a game where your defense only allows 6 or 12 points, look in the mirror, man. A home game, no less. Like it Josh T, I don't think like the complicated piece of this with patience and talking about problems is that I would have expect this was a problem that we pointed out in his rookie year, and he really, really struggled with it still in game 17. Like it's a major red flag. If anything, I, as somebody who would consider himself a fanalist, is just trying to point out that it's a red flag and it's got to get better because it's been a problem and it's got to get better because right now it feels like Fields is living off of screens and the crazy plays that he makes sometimes. But a lot of that, the decision maker that we saw, um, that went through everything and like wristed the ball where it needed to be in Minnesota. We didn't see that tonight. Maybe part of it was pressure. Like truly, maybe it was. But then even on the plays where it felt like the offensive line did pick up a sweet blitz, they were able or like Fields held on to it, didn't find anybody downfield because again, I mean, this is the NFL. It's very common to say, okay, like you can't cover forever. And that would be true. But in the NFL, from what I've seen, if you wait 3 to 5 seconds, like Fields is doing in some cases, the defense will cover everybody. Like it's it's hard, right? It's hard watching Fields take a step, fall back into the pocket, look downfield, look downfield, look downfield. He doesn't see anybody, rolls out and runs. Because while it's working for now, it can't work forever. And I mean, I guess you can say it didn't work today because they scored 7 points and lost. I mean, Joe, that's actually the thing. If Mooney catches that ball, it would be the same because it wouldn't change the fact that Fields put the ball there. That play is like a plus in the evaluation, right? Like, okay, let me phrase it this way, right? You have to go back and ask yourself. So Mitch Trubisky, let's use a stupid example, right? Mitch Trubisky beat the Rams in 2018, right? Did Mitch play well in that game? Answer. Go ahead and answer, right? He won. He won 13-10, right? He won on Santa's sleigh, or was it Willy Wonka? Like, did he win, or would you consider that a good game from Mitch? Like, it was he won though. Escape. Like he won. He won the game. Like he he won the football game. That's all that matters, right? He made the throw at the end. He scored a touchdown. He took care of the football. Or like sort of, I guess. I don't know. Like but he won, guys. He won. So how so if Fields had made that throw to Mooney, then everything changes because he won the game, right? I don't think so. Like that's the thing, James. Mitch had a better line in receivers, but you got to remember that the Bears were no, Josh, that game had 23 total points scored. This one had 19. Um, but so the point being that Fields and the Bears went up against Carson Wentz, who, if I'm understanding it correctly, had like a torn bicep. Like somebody in the chat may know more than me, but they went up against Carson Wentz, who was hurt and is bad. And they held them to 12 points with a gift at the 10-yard line. Like they they had something horrible go wrong and they still held the Commanders to 12 points. Had they, after scoring a touchdown, just kicked field goals. Honestly, had they kicked field goals every time they got to the 10-yard line, they would have scored an automatic 9 points and have been one away from tying the game. So it's rough, like, looking at this. And oh, yeah, and Haplo, he did hurt his hand in the middle of the game. Like, it's weird to talk about this because O'Shea, I kind of agree with you, but I watch tons of quarterbacks all across the league throw into those same contested windows every single Sunday. Like it's very easy to say the words, well, Fields would throw to it if the receivers were better. And yet we've got Geno Smith, who's like, okay, so Geno Smith has some dudes around him. I completely hear what you're saying there. Like we've got, I'll use Bailey Zappi. Bailey Zappi is throwing into really tight windows to guys like, I actually don't know their names. Like Pats receivers that are not good. And it's not to say that necessarily like I would trade Fields for Zappi. I wouldn't. I'm trying to talk about the frustrating piece of quarterback development. What about Fields' game is frustrating me right now? And it's the fact that I feel like he's so close and yet so far, because right now he looks like an exceptional talent. And I feel like he's struggling with the technique of quarterback. And that's, I think, really where my head is at. James, to use an example, like, because on one hand, I hear you. Like, if they do make the fourth down conversions, I'm muttering to myself, "Well, it's not a good game," but at least the deep or the offense propped him up. And yet, we've got that miss to Ryan Griffin in the or in the end zone, which is not good. Like, it feels as if Fields is doing things that are so categorically hard that plenty of people, nothing wrong with this if you guys feel this way, are saying, okay, okay, if he can do that, what are you talking about trying to say that he can't make a throw on the flat? And I would believe you, but he's not doing it. Like, it's it's hard to talk about. And Jay Sanders, I want to be there too. Where you say the fact that you can't criticize Fields without or criticizing the pieces he doesn't have around him, it's not his fault. I want to agree with you. But football is a team sport. There is no point at which you can point and say it's all Fields' fault. And if you could, the Bears might have moved on to from Jay Cutler a while back, or like a little bit earlier. And that's me being tongue in cheek. It's me pointing out that there were at least 4 or 5 years where I remember as a young fan, I woke up that year and said, okay, Fields has, or not Fields, Cutler has everything around him. And this is the year. If he can't do it this year, then he can't do it. And he wouldn't do it. And we would stick with him anyways. And I would get super excited. And I would say the same thing the year after that. And then something else would go wrong. And I'd say, oh, come on. Forte got hurt. How on earth could they run their offense without Forte? And so it's not necessarily that I think that Fields wouldn't. Let's be clear. Fields would be better if he had DK Metcalf. Fields would be better if he had an offensive line. But I do think that there are simplistic quarterbacking things that Fields can, and I would think should do within within a lot of these games, that the fact that he's not doing has me wondering why. And I want to solve those answers. We can take a look at the all 22. The all 22 is always revealing because Fields isn't playing blind, right? Like, Fields isn't out there guessing. He's not. And Steven, I'm not rooting for him to fail. Of course, I'm not rooting for him to fail. I'm looking for answers as much as anything else. I that's the best way to put this, is that I'm looking for answers every time I talk about this topic. I could easily, let's be clear, right, guys? It's easy. It would be easy for me to be yet another voice saying, hot dang, like or I love Justin Fields. Everybody else is the problem. Freaking fire Luke Getsy. Like, let's get a new offensive staff. Ryan Poles is the worst. Spend a bunch of money on offensive line. Spend a bunch of money on receiver. Draft a new receiver. Draft another offensive lineman. And then, dadgum, finally, we're going to have ourselves a real offense. And you know what? There's some truth to seriously all of that. There's seriously some truth to all of that. Whether you think Tua Tagovailoa rules or not, his offense around him is practically unfailable. Like, he is a killer. Or not he, like Waddle and Tyreek Hill are amazing. And I think Jalen Hurts, on the other hand, took a serious step forward. And it's hard to suggest that his offense isn't phenomenal around him. Like, yes, Hurts took a step forward. Goddard rules. Devontae Smith rules. His offensive line rules. Sanders rules. Like, I hear you guys. I mean, what is it? Patrick Mahomes popped off. He's loaded with weapons. Justin Herbert pops off. He's loaded with weapons. If you gave Justin Fields all the dudes in the world, he probably would look better. And Reinhardt, as much as we say that, there's truth to the idea that there are two options here. One, Fields can learn that this isn't OSU. Two, you can make the team as close to OSU as possible and just get a bunch of guys, right? Like, there are a lot of paths here, you know? And Raging, let me see what you're saying. Like, J2K, what did we draft Velus Jones for? I think he was supposed to draft or to like I think he was supposed to stretch the field, but he's not. Like they barely trust him to run routes. And Khalid, like you're saying, like what you say, I'm ready for Fields to take another step, but I understand growing is not a linear path. I think he played okay, made plays. He still made mistakes. I will tell you that whenever I think about this game, and I've tried to think through it a couple times, like for every mistake that I find, there are a bunch of plays within this game that Fields made that there aren't a lot of other guys that can make. I mean, admittedly, Fields has converted some third downs that are just unconscionable this year. And so for all the people like Draco, who I think's in the chat, that are like, oh, come on, man. Like, we can't be this down. Like, I hear you, because when Fields breaks a tackle in the pocket, scrambles for a first down, dives forward, doesn't take a hit, and the Bears move the chains, you go, shoot. You put some stuff around him, and like, man, like this kid can play. How can you look at this kid and think he can't play? Like, yeah, I think he can play. Like, let me be plain as day. If and because we don't know yet, Fields doesn't work out, I think that he would be very Anthony Miller like, where the talent is obvious. And it's not that I'm trying to say that there'd be an off field issue. They're not exactly the same, but that it would be more than just a talent problem. Like somebody said this earlier with Mitch, that Mitch hit the point where like, he just showed that he had major accuracy issues. Fields hasn't shown that, right? Like Fields will force the occasional ball that doesn't quite work. And that's, I don't know. I almost think that's fine. Better that than just never throwing the ball. But it's going to be a work in progress. Because to your point on what I mean, what Brano's saying, like I don't think Matthew Stafford. I can click on all of you guys, and so I'm just going to do that. Like Brano mentions that or that the Rams surrounded Stafford with talent. There are a lot of people out there that have declared Matt Stafford suddenly as like, wow, he's one of the best quarterbacks in football. And he had a pretty okay season last year. And like speaking last year, Draco, they were Matt Stafford was not amazing. Matt Stafford probably wasn't a top 5 quarterback in football. They just had one of the best receiver in football. They had a really good offensive line. They had really phenomenal defenders, and they ground their way to a Super Bowl. They also had Odell Beckham Jr. Like the it's it's wild looking at this because to the credit of every single person in this chat saying we need to invest in offense, Fields would look better. The question becomes, if we do that, are we masking the problem a la Mitch, right? Or are we enhancing a young quarterback that has obviously shown us we can win? And I actually don't know the answer. I'm a Bears podcaster. I get asked all the time to talk about like instant reaction to the game. And I didn't think the game was super good. My instant reaction is that there were a lot of plays that Herb Street highlighted that I agree, or there were some plays that Herb Street highlighted that I disagreed on what Herb Street was saying, and I couldn't help but think to myself, "Geez, man, like really, you're gonna call Fields out for this, but you're gonna let it go when Carson Wentz does the exact same thing? Like we're gonna talk about Carson Wentz as if finding the Tampa 2 hole shot is something impressive, even though that's something that like high school quarterbacks can do. But we're going to talk about Fields like standing behind a really crappy pocket by offensive linemen that can barely block and are suddenly rotating in and out of every single game. And yet we're going to point out every single mistake he makes. Man, that feels rough. But there is truth to a lot of what he's saying. Like that's the complex thing here. Like it's not black and white. We are dealing with shades of gray. And it's like you're saying, Brano. I actually agree with you that either way, we've got to invest in offense. Tinder thing. These daggum bots. Gotta love them, I guess you could say. But it's like, let's see, Wentz's near overthrow to a wide open pass being, yeah, exactly, Josh. Like this stuff happens all the time. And I'll point out that Chicago in particular is extra bad about judging quarterbacks, specifically young quarterbacks, because we don't actually really know the error rate of the good ones because we don't have one. But let me see. Let's see here. Looking through some of these, the bots supported the stream. Roquan got toasted there. He did. Got his tight end lit up 100%. Bots are Packers fans. I agree. Um, it's tough. Like the whole thing is tough. We'll have to see what happens. I mean, I'll be honest. This was a game where maybe part of it, right, is that I feel like Fields should have had a bigger game, and that I feel like there was a bigger game left out on the field. Maybe that's part of it, right? Is that I see the crazy pass to Pettis on the goal line, but I also see a much easier route to David Montgomery the down before. I don't care. Can I be so clear? I don't care about the fourth down Montgomery thing. I think that's a stupid conversation. We're going to go through, we're going to see that Darnell Mooney, the number one read, or at least Fields' number one read, because that's his number one receiver, was open enough in the end zone. He planted the ball on him. Darnell's got to catch that. Period. End of story. That's the fourth down. Somebody asked me about the fourth down earlier. That's the fourth down. Fields did fine. Was the throw a little late? I don't care. He stuck the ball on the receiver over the goal line in the hands. That's what you do on fourth down. You gotta get there. Because Reinhardt, you're saying like he was still late, but on a flare route, you can be later than you can on a curl or on a dig in many cases. But two downs before then, Justin Fields was sitting in a clean pocket with David Montgomery as his check down, wide open, and he didn't look that way. And I don't know why. Those are the things that if as an evaluator, I want to see change. It's not, wow, I want him to read a different part of the field, unless I can make a decision pre-snap that I think might have been a little bit better. But I want to make sure that we don't abuse the power of the clicker, if that makes sense. Like we've talked about that on our all 22 stream, that there's a power of the clicker, so to speak, that we can use hindsight and say, well, that didn't work, so we should have done something else. And that's not the point here. Like when you mentioned that last play, like let me see, Carson says, can you talk about that last play? I agree, Mooney should have helped him and made that catch. Did he stick it on him? He lofted that ball to him. I don't think that throwing it harder, throwing it not as hard should have made a difference. The ball was well within Mooney's wheelhouse. Like within Mooney's wheelhouse, you should be able to catch that football. Two hands on the ball, defender not interfering yet, catch the dang ball. Like, period. In my opinion, I don't think that there's any point where we get anything positive critiquing that play, because it just sounds like we're mad that he didn't score a touchdown, but he made a touchdown level play. That's enough for me. The the two plays before that, though, what I'm frustrated about is that Fields looked downfield and rolled out of a clean pocket instead of ever looking at his check down, right? Like that's where I'm frustrated. It's little stuff, right? It's I don't like my options. Check the check down. You don't even have to throw it to the check down, Michael. Good to see you. Like it's it's not that I'm frustrated. You get the idea, right? Like the Pettis was DPI and a hard one. It was a tough catch to make. A better receiver probably does come down with it, and you'd love to see somebody come down with it. But if we're going to say that the Pettis throw, look, I think I don't at any point, like you guys know, want to just go dunking, right? But like if we're going to say, okay, come on, a better receiver is going to catch the Pettis one, I'm going to say a better quarterback, not better, a different quarterback probably gets the ball over the defensive line and into Kmet's vicinity. Does Kmet catch it? I don't know, but it's probably not a pick, right? Like there's a bunch of those kinds of things where I find myself looking and think to myself at the very least, like, oh man, what would it have looked like if basic run of the mill? Can you guys pick out a replacement level quarterback? Like it, because I am curious. Like, who's a name we can bring up that doesn't sound like I am picking on somebody? Right. I don't want to pick Simeon. That sounds like I want the backup to play, and I don't. I don't want to pick like, I don't know, Andy Dalton. We could use Andy Dalton if you wanted to. But like let's throw some names at Mills. Like Mills is too young. That makes it sound like I'm directly comparing. Tyler Huntley, we can. Drew Lock, maybe. Lock has his own problems, but like Kirk Cousins isn't a bad idea. Like we're getting a lot of names here, and that's hilarious. But like Nick Foles, Bridgewater, Cooper, like Cooper Rush, gracious alive. There are a lot of quarterbacks that I don't think give up a pick on the goal line. And while you may say, "Okay, come on, Robert, that's a fluky play," like that hurts. That really hurts your offense. And not only that, but it's just like a really bad throw. Because if the quarter or if the ball doesn't get through the line, duh, then it's not going to go anywhere good. And hitting the D lineman in the face means that he didn't jump. If that ball had been tipped by an outstretched hand, I think very differently of that play. But it hit him in the face. So it's just attached to where he stands, right? You got to get that ball over the offensive line. Duh. Like I'm saying duh like this is somehow hard. That's the hard part about this. Somebody asked me earlier saying, well, and of course Flus didn't seem to fault him. What's Flus going to say? That sucks and I hate my quarterback? Like there is an aspect of that kind of thing where if it's that basic, you can't just come out and dunk, right? But I'm more saying than anything that there are a ton of pieces to Fields' game where I feel like what I'm about to critique him on is so easy that every other quarterback in the NFL does it. And within that, it sounds ridiculous. But because like really? He's calling out Fields for throwing a pick off a defensive lineman's head? Come on. But like you got to make those plays. I mean, at least you got to put the ball in Kmet's vicinity so that Kmet can drop it, right? And Jay Sanders, I want to know what me not having played football makes a difference about that for, because I've played plenty of competitive sports. Like and plus I've watched plenty of football tape. Like I get the whole you've never played football thing, but if you don't mind me just addressing that directly, I don't really understand why that matters about a play that I could point and click at plenty of other quarterbacks, and plenty of other quarterbacks can make a throw into the end zone without getting it batted at the line like that. But that's just my like. Let's see, Packers lost because Rogers did the same thing. Giants just didn't pick it. You're totally right. I mean, Rogers has been struggling this season in a lot of the same ways because Rogers had two of those balls batted down. But it also feels like Fields hasn't fed a ball into the end zone yet, just about once this year. But it's it's a complicated game, and frankly, it's a complicated subject because I know just how much emotion goes into something like evaluating Justin Fields. I mean, if Justin Fields is wrong or like if Justin Fields is bad, that's that's really heartbreaking in a lot of ways. And so I don't know. I mean, like everybody's saying, it's not as if this roster was perfectly constructed, right? It's not as if this roster is doing a ton to help Justin Fields. Like you're saying, G, I mean, there's plenty of points where you could say maybe they should have just run the ball. But like you're saying, or like Draco, I know you were asking for a couple weeks ago, you can't fault the Bears for not putting this game in Justin Fields' hands, right? Like consistently, they gave Justin Fields the opportunity to pass the ball and win, right? And we'll see. Like, let's see. Connor says trying to raise a young quarterback by simultaneously tearing down the roster is tough. It's extremely tough. If anything, you could argue that they picked one over the other. Matthew Napoleon, if Fields hits Griffin, we win that game. If Fields hits Griffin, I feel way better, right? Like, I mean, honestly, if Fields hits Griffin, I say, okay, he made some mistakes, but we know he makes those mistakes and he missed or like and he got a layup and like they end up winning the game and that's fine. Or at least maybe you say like, okay, if that's the good and this is the bad, then let's just see if we can't move all this up. Missing that one, you know what? Honestly, like it's you bring up a good point that it could be a little bit of overfocus on one, but God, it felt real easy. And missing that really hurts. But I don't know. It's complicated because, like you're saying, Joe, we're giving Fields a butterfly, like a butter knife to a gunfight, but that's the other thing. Draco, Draco nails it. Sometimes we're giving him a butter knife for a gunfight. Other times, Fields is picking a butter knife over the gun, like that slot fade to or to Mooney, where I get the impression it was a pick aside, right? I haven't seen it. I saw it once, right, where the like and Jarrell, I'm curious as to what you mean by that. And JP, the Bears have done tons of max protect, tons, and it still results in sacks in many cases. But the like, I got the impression that that Mooney deep shot that didn't fall was a pick aside, where Fields had a slot fade on one side and he had like a man pick on the other side, and it's 3rd and 2, right? Um, and so within that play, it is I don't know. I don't know how he's coached. That's the complicated part, right? If Fields got the green light to hit the matchup, then great. You know, that works. But it is 3rd down. Like the priority is to pick up the next down and take your shots on 1st and 2nd down so that you can move the sticks later. I don't know. That's the complicated piece of this, right? Is like I can't actually know how Fields is being coached. I can guess, and then my guesses aren't even always going to be accurate. I can point out what's on the like the other stuff. And Jarrell, you say I can't harp on Fields for his missed throws and then ignore the great plays that almost won the game. If they had beaten the Commanders 13 to, or I guess it would be 14 to 12, like exactly what Kevin's saying is what I think is important, Jarrell. We only almost won because the Commanders are awful. And you can say, hey, you've only get to play the team in front of you, but we can evaluate the offense independently of how we evaluate like the whole game. I think the Bears should have blown them out. And I'm not even saying 40. I'm saying the Bears should have probably beaten them soundly 24 to 12. Let's even include a muffed punt, right? But if you take the muffed punt out, chances are the Bears beat them soundly 24 to 6, right? Like 3 touchdowns, 1 field goal. Very normal, right? Draco, do I think Mooney stopped running for the ball? I don't know. Like, at what point are we really going or like picking through with a fine tooth comb and assuming that Mooney must just hate Justin Fields? Because it's like, it's bizarre to me the way that we look at Mooney and Fields, and I have never seen or like a receiver quarterback pairing that seems less on the same page. And the bizarre part is they apparently spent the entire offseason together. I mean, tons, tons of these like plays here and there where the Bears like where Mooney curls in and the throw goes out, or Mooney runs through and the throw assumed he would stop. Like there's to your point, Raging Oracle, you gotta wonder past a certain point whether some of this just begging the question, because there are so many questions. I, on a podcast, have to make the assumption that we are going to grade Fields like you would grade any normal quarterback tape, right? But then when you actually think about it, these receivers have managed to let Fields down in tons of situations. And Josh, I mean, you say that about like Fields and Robinson. Fields and Mooney look so like they look worse in terms of just on the same pageness. Like Vlad Mooney is making Fields look like he sucks. I would make the argument, and good night, Brano, that Equinemius St. Brown has done Fields more favors this year than Darnell Mooney has, which I'm kind of stunned about. Let's see. If Fields not holding the ball too long, it's a breakdown in blocking. If he gets it on time, it's a drop. If he takes too long, the blocking is good, but he takes a sack. Honestly, Draco, so the weird part to me is that there is truth to that. And then there's also a bunch of these where you say, and then the blocking is good, and the receivers are good, and Fields holds onto the ball too long, and then they take a sack anyways. Yeah, I'm sure it is, Reinhardt. But like it's all over the place. And no quarterback is perfect. To suddenly pretend that it's all Justin Fields' fault is ridiculous. And I hope it didn't come across that way. It's more that I am I think I just wanted Fields to continue looking like he did against the Minnesota game, where it felt like when things went wrong, we could point and say that was very obviously the team's fault, right? The Within this game, I feel like there were a lot of things where Fields literally put the team on his back and said, I could care less if I have teammates. I'm going to make a play anyways. Totally. 100%. There were a lot of plays where it felt like Fields, frankly, ignored the team to his detriment in some cases. But there were also a lot of plays where I think that we named a bunch of names: Nick Foles, Andy Dalton, Tyler Huntley, like that they make the throw and that things look a little easier than they did because you don't need your quarterback running the ball 13 times a game off of like fairly clean pockets to move the ball down the field. You shouldn't, anyways. Like maybe it's the receivers. The receivers are bad. Maybe it's the offensive line. The offensive line ain't good either. But like Ronald said, it looks to me like Fields is just struggling with Ohio State itis, where he had Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave to throw to. And it's going to take time to adjust to the speed of the NFL game. But I would have expected him to have received some coaching on it and to have seen some movement, which we haven't yet. Well, not in that game, but we'll see. Like we'll see. Jarrell, are you saying like maybe they make the throw to Griffin, but they don't make the awesome throw to Pettis? It probably. I mean, the awesome throw to Pettis was awesome. Fields is hitting his like home runs. I just want to see more singles and doubles. Is like not a bad way to put it. Brian Dabble would have been awesome. Next time you watch the All-22, watch the routes, the lack of precision, the wide receivers are executing, outs look like curls. Yeah, raging. I mean, no argument there. Like what is it? Like when you watch these receivers, it feels like so much of this offense lacks precision in general. Like it's rough. And gosh, I don't know. Like we could keep talking, but at the end of the day, I do feel like I need the All-22 to have any other opinion. I need to edit this podcast so that I can get it posted. It's about 12:30. 2 touchdown passes were dropped, Maurice. There were other touchdown opportunities that weren't cashed in on. The running game doesn't work in the red zone, which is the worst. JP, I agree with you. Like Fields is in love with the deep ball. That's not really that big of a problem. But it does feel like every time he checks things down to Montgomery, the Bears get a first down out of it. And so I don't know why I wouldn't want Fields to check it down to Montgomery more often because Montgomery's freaking killing it. Like, let's see, if guys played harder in college, can't make the transition, or like, wait, so hang on, Reinhardt, what are you saying? Here's the thing. If guys who played harder in college or a harder competition, it can't make it in college, Fields is less of a guarantee. You may need to expand on that. Let's see. We needed a true number one for Mooney to succeed. Probably Kevin. Feels like Fields and Mooney are both too inexperienced for their connection to act means something special. Probably. Imagine. Dang. Let's see. Straight up, should not have struggled that much against the Commanders. Not a slight, but we should have won handily. James, ultimately, that's where I think I come back to, is that if this offense, it's not like they went 3 and out a bunch, right? Like it's not as if they weren't moving the ball. It's that they just scored next to no points compared to what they probably should have. Let's see, that last third and short, he had a guy as a check down for a first down, but he was getting lit up all game and made many plays. Censored. The complicated piece is that, like, yeah, I do think, believe it or not, we're hitting the stage where we probably are belaboring it, at least a little bit. I don't know. I mean, complicated piece is that you take a look at a lot of this tomorrow, a lot of this like stuff as the weekend goes on. I mean, like Fields is going to get a horrible PFF grade for this one. Like there are plenty of people are going to be like, ooh, and then plenty of people are going to come back and they're going to cape for him. I mean, like just calling it out, right? I am going to consistently try to be as down the middle as I can. Like truly, I mean that. And there'll be plenty of times where you guys are going to call me an idiot because I'm going to be I'm going to be an idiot, right? I am not right about everything, but if I don't call it as close as I can to as accurate as I can, then I don't think my word means anything. You're probably going to see another 670 Trent Dilfer or like Trent Dilfer review where Dilfer says, I thought Fields played great. He was the only reason the offense was doing anything. I'm sure we're going to see Nate Tice say, ooh, but look at that sweet Dante Pettis throw. I'm sure we're going to see plenty of other people say Fields is a bust and he can't read the defense and his processor sucks and lull the Bears. Like, there's going to be commentary all over the place, all over the place. But so censored, you missed the first half, and the first half was where he's probably struggled the most. But it's like, it's a game that I think anybody who's frustrated, I vibe with you. I'm frustrated. I can't believe the Bears lost to this team. They lost to a team that just was not good. The Commanders are bad. Like, you can't lose this game. I mean, I don't think the Commanders played above their station. I don't think that I thought the Bears offense just massively underperformed. Like, and it is hard for me to look at the offense underperforming and not end up frustrated with the way that the quarterback played within that. And I'm with you, Jarrell. Like, in the world of how should we feel about this loss? This loss like might be good news. Like, this loss is how you get a little bit closer to JSN. This is how you get a little bit closer to Jordan Addison. This is how you get a little bit closer to other things. And Ronald, that's the thing. Nobody is saying that the quarterback, I hope anyways, nobody is saying that the quarterback is a bust. I'm saying the quarterback didn't play well, in my opinion. But it's weird. And like, exactly, Reinhardt. I've noticed that every time I watch a lot of these guys, like a lot of the guys that I really respect, plenty of people are going to come out and they're going to say, here's how the Bears are failing him. And it's not that I don't believe them. It's that I can make a real argument that the entire NFL, except for Doug Peterson, failed Nick Foles, and the one team that gave him the offensive line that he needed and full control over the offense immediately won a Super Bowl. For crying out loud. There are a lot of quarterbacks that if you gave them every single thing they could ever ask for, including a few lucky wins, you get a Matt Stafford trip to the Super Bowl and he wins. Like, the complex thing here, right, is that if Fields never took another step forward, you could probably design like an almost like run and shoot offense off of what he can do that might be kind of sweet. It's just hard to get 10 other all pros, right? It's hard to get that super sweet offensive line and super sweet receivers and super sweet tight end, like, and more super sweet running backs. Like, it's bizarre and hard talking about a lot of this because I'll throw it out there. Justin Herbert looks awesome. Justin Herbert is struggling. Why is Justin Herbert struggling? Well, their weapons are getting a little bit older. They were always founded on Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, and Keenan Allen wasn't going to last forever, plus a couple of injuries. It's not to say that Justin Herbert sucks. Justin Herbert has already earned the benefit of the doubt, but suddenly people are begging the question on Joe Burrow, for crying out loud, in some circles. Suddenly people are literally willing to move on from Mac Jones because Bailey Zappi can win some football games. Like, there's tons of places all across the NFL where I agree with exactly what's going on with all of y'all, or with what all of y'all are saying, that ultimately, whether it's Justin Fields or whether it's somebody else, nobody could actually succeed with these receivers. They could play. I mean, Reinhardt, if there's one thing, because I know you're in here mostly talking about what I'm talking about, like, because let's see, yeah, that's the thing, Draco. Ultimately, we don't give anybody enough time. Ultimately, we take who's successful and we just let them, right? Or like, we take who's successful and we just say they're good and we leave it at that, right? Ultimately, I don't think it's fair to judge Justin Fields finally until 6 games into year 3, at least. right? That's when I made the decision with Mitch. That's as long as Fields has in my mind. The problem is I don't know if Ryan Poles has that patience because Ryan Poles didn't do a damn thing to help out like Fields within this offseason. And you could say, oh, well, he traded he traded or like he got N'Keal Harry. He got Byron Pringle, who cost us a third round compensatory pick for crying out freaking loud. Like he got us Braxton Jones, who got destroyed today, like most fifth round rookies would. Like you could point out some of these things that Ryan Poles kind of did, but he sold him out. And Reinhardt, seriously, one thing I think is easy for us, just saying, is that there is a lot of first of all, I agree, your leash gets shorter the more games like the Texans you get. But also, I will say that it's easy for us to look at a quarterback who's struggling and not ignore, but not think about how many more plays better scheme would help Justin Fields make. Not better scheme, better players around Justin Fields. Like just throwing it out there. If you took the offensive line from probably 28th in the league to 14th, I think that's achievable. And then you took the wide receivers, you added, let's not say literally DJ Moore. Okay, no. Let's pick something realistic. They extend Darnell Mooney. They give him like $18 million a year, if not more. Just get ready for it. That one's going to hurt. So they extend Darnell Mooney. They draft Jordan Addison. They sign Alan Lazard. Okay, so you got those three. They get rid of Cole Kmet because we're done. They add Mike Gesicki. I don't know. Like that'll work, right? And so they've now got the 14th best offensive line. They've got Mike Gesicki. They've got those three receivers that we just mentioned: Jordan Addison, Darnell Mooney, and Alan Lazard. And almost immediately, I think the offense gets a lot better. Like Jarrell, we're not ideating the perfect offense. I'm ideating better within reach, right? And so you have to like immediately. I think that there's a lot of things that whether it's like a dig route that Alan Lazard's running that he can stay open on for as long as Fields needs him to be, right? Or needs him to be open to feel comfortable throwing to him. Whether it's Jordan Addison just like mossing somebody, Maurice, they're definitely extending Mooney. There's no way they're not extending Mooney like easily. But so it's not about him being a number one. They're going to extend him to be a number two, more than likely. And so it becomes that question, like you're saying. I mean, Reinhardt, just to use an example, while you want him to be the tide and not the boats, I think that there's a feedback loop there. I think it's easy to say that the quarterback's the driver and the driver's the quarterback, but not quite. I mean, Stafford isn't the reason the Rams won the Super Bowl, and yet I don't think they were winning it with Goff, right? So an upgrade or better is like not the same as, I don't know. Everything's like kind of relative. It's bizarre. We have to talk about a lot of this stuff. It's weird. And so, because like you're saying, O'Shea, I mean, Fields has half of a weapon. Kyler balled with Hopkins and is struggling without him. Like, there's tons of examples like that. Lamar Jackson is putting on a clinic partially because his best weapon is Mark Andrews right now. And no, raging. Lazard's going to get 15 mil. Mooney's going to get 20 unless this season continues exactly like it can or like it is. And then Mooney's going to get only 18. Like he had 1,000 yards in his second year. Like he's going to get a ton. And so is Fields going to get better if you do that? Yes. Like 100%. I think so anyways. How much better is Fields going to get? How much of the little things are Fields going to look better at? Is he going to be able to get the ball out more on time? Like, I actually kind of think so. I mean, truly, Reinhardt, I believe in the concept that a rising tide does lift all boats, and that if people were open, suddenly the game starts to look a little bit more like Oklahoma State. Or that's on me for saying OSU, Ohio State. But I don't know. I mean, it's going to be an adventure to talk about it all. And believe it or not, we're going to hit the point where it's going to sound like I'm getting ever more favorable because they're not going to play the Commanders every week. And when you play a bad defense, you have a lot of opportunity to light people up. When you play a good defense like the Cowboys, there's just not much there for you. And so I expect less to be there for him. But we'll see. I mean, Big DeBulls P, he needs a lot more than just that tight end. He needs a lot of things. I mean, Ryan, he doesn't trust anything at all. I agree. Like, I don't know about play caller, but let's at least start by saying he doesn't trust his O-line. He doesn't trust his receivers. And so we'll have to see what happens. I liked what Reinhardt said earlier, saying that we're at about, I mean, I'm probably at about DEFCON 2.5. I know Reinhardt is. I know there are a lot of people that aren't, but like, we're not at 4, right? We're not at DEFCON 5. We're not at DEFCON 4. We're not at DEFCON 3. We're at like, hey, this wasn't fun to watch. and we probably need things that are ever so slightly more fun to watch. I'm not looking for 300 yards. I'm looking for situationally better. But either way, guys, you've been awesome. As always, stick with the channel if you want more Bears analysis. We're probably going to stick to Tuesday for all 22 stuff, which is going to be a little long in the tooth, but we'll let everybody settle down. I need to settle down. You mentioned that Leno shut down Quinn. I just want to point out that is there anything more ironic than Chicago's least favorite player in Charles Leno absolutely dominating Robert Quinn, who, say what you will about Quinn being like Deadzo or like Dunzo and having lost all of his talent, but man, the like that was kind of hilarious. just because I know I took a ton of abuse for suggesting that Leno was like a relatively solid tackle and no more than that. And he immediately went and rolled. But let's see. Let me. Oh, thank you, Ryan. That's really kind of you. That was like, thank you so much for saying that. Let me see here. Of course, J2K, always happy to. So here's where we're going to be. Like we talked about Tuesday. I want everybody to have a Friday. I don't want to do a stream on Saturday. That's a sacred college football day. And I think we can all agree with that. On Sunday, let's all watch some other football. I'm not going to compete with Monday Night Football. So we'll stick with Tuesday. Like, it'll be weird because it'll be late, but I cannot believe I'm going to do this. But let me see. We'll do this Tuesday night stream and it'll feel a little later, and then we'll do we'll do Tuesday night stream after Monday Night Football. We'll just have to find a way. Let me see. What did somebody ask? Let's see. Leno was one of their best linemen on the field, and that's by no means me trying to be like, whoa, love. Yeah, no, Draco, we're not even playing with pass rush. And even still, Wentz couldn't do anything. Like, Terry McLaurin's out there, and the Bears are giving up tons of stuff. Will I have all 22 by then? BG, we're going to try. Like, I should have it by, what do you call it? Like the afternoon on Tuesday at the very least. Let's see. I don't think we had pass rush either, Draco. Like, I could talk to you guys literally all night. That's probably not smart for me. Let's see. After Monday Night Football, I try to sleep at 3. We'll see. But yeah, 99 pass yards, and the Bears didn't win, which hurts. What was the worst? The O-line, the receivers, the pass rush? Well, of those 3, Ryan, the pass rush. Because the pass rush is absolutely non-existent. I would say that the receivers to me looked okay today. Like, don't talk to me about ISM. He does not count. Like, that guy sucks. But I thought Pettis was relatively open. I thought ESB does what ESB does. I thought Mooney was relatively open, and I thought the offensive line was horrible. I mean, Montez Sweat worked us. I thought Deron Payne worked us. I thought Jonathan Allen worked us. Like the pressure was intense, but not on all of the plays. Like at the very least, I think that realistically, the Bears should have given up a hefty 25% pressure percentage, which is still a lot, by the way. But instead, they gave up a 48 like percent pressure percentage, and it's just both, right? It's like the offensive line isn't playing well to begin with. And so Fields starts to assume that he has to be a hero on every down. And then the offensive line holds up fine. And Fields takes himself out of pocket or like, or I don't know. It's just this really horrible feedback loop. Like, and it's definitely not helping anybody. Kendrick, do we pay JJ as a top 5 corner in the future? I'd pay Jalen Johnson what he asks, but I would specifically, I would check with one person first. I would want to know what his trainers think, because at least what I am seeing is that, like, did I say positive? Yeah, it's a very negative feedback loop. At least what I am seeing suggests that Jalen Johnson is a very good corner, but that he may have physical issues that could potentially limit his career going forward. Let's see the one thing. So censored, the thing you got to do is you got to go back and watch the first half, or you can wait for the all 22, because I actually think Justin was fine in the second half. If Justin had played the second half and then played the first half exactly like the second half, I think that there are a lot less complaints. The first half left a lot on the table, but I mean, how much of that is me just overreacting to one half of football versus me compound reacting? This is the complicated part. For anybody who's still here, I'm impressed. But the gist that we can like talk through is, am I reacting to one half of football, or am I reacting to pieces of the San Fran game, which I told myself weren't fair, and pieces of the Packer game, which I told myself weren't fair, and the whole Texans game as a massive package, and pieces of the Giants game that I told myself no big deal, and now I'm seeing them still there. Does that make sense? Like, that's as an evaluator where I know my head is at, where I'm getting lost in the weeds, so to speak, is every time we see the red flags again, it becomes okay, did I just like not react the first time enough? Is this not a fluke? Is this a trend? And like BG is saying, I think it's cumulative too. Like maybe I actually think in many cases I'm overreacting to one first half of football because I underreacted to some of the others. That's how it feels. Emphasis on that F word, feels. It's not that it's 100% correct, right? This is an instant reaction. It's that there is a lot of this because, like Ryan McCarron's saying, there were some plays Fields made at the end that could have immediately been ultra star stuff, right? Like there were some plays Fields made at the end that if he had made, or that if like the ball had been caught by Dante Pettis, it's a huge highlight, and people go, "Holy smokes, what a throw! What a throw!" And like Big Bull, or like Big to Bulls, I do think we can be critical, but B, like we have to be patient, and we have to see an offense that's kind of growing and finding itself. If there is anything I'm worried about, it's that I don't know that we are going to see the Allen thing happen. And I only say that because so far, like Reinhard, I'm going to say something that I think is ridiculous. I think there are going to be a lot more Josh Allens coming forward. I think that there are going to be a lot less Herberts and a lot more Allens, period. Because I am personally one that's starting to think worse and worse and worse about the way that college quarterbacks are raised. It's rare to find a Will Levis type. Where they're running a pro style offense. Like Baylor's running a pro style offense, but that's rare. You get a lot more of the like you get less Mac Joneses is a decent way to put it, and a lot more Trey Lances. And I mean, look around the league, right? Like when we take a look at Zach Wilson, I don't know if Zach Wilson looks really fabulous, and his offense certainly wasn't pro style, and he's not necessarily getting it either. Trey Lance did not look like he was catching up and moving with it. Exactly. A lot less prototype, a lot more runners. Because of that, it might take a lot of these guys 3 years to put the pieces together. Look at Hurts, look at Tua. Like Mac was way ahead of the curve, but that's rare. Like within this setup, I don't know, landscape of football, I think that as we see more of these guys that are built to be these like athletic blossoms of talent, that it's taking guys a lot longer to adjust to the NFL game. And so you do need to wait and see what they look like when they've got weapons that match the other weapons across the field. Because as much as I would look, okay, let me ask you this, right? How many of the Eagles receivers would you look at and potentially trade? Um, like, and if you could get Justin Jefferson, like, what is it? What is it? What am I looking at here? I'm trying to think of the name. Devontae Smith is good. A lot of the Eagles receivers are good. Their offensive line is awesome. If you scaled the Vikings weapons and the Eagles weapons, how much different are they? If you scaled the Cowboys weapons and the Eagles weapons, how much like different are they? If you scaled any of those teams and you immediately compare them to the Bears, the comparison is laughable. And we all know that, right? So is it embarrassing when Trey Lance can't seem to score despite having Debo Samuel, like, and not a very good offensive line, admittedly, but like Debo Samuel, George Kittle, and others like that? I actually worry for his sake that that looks a lot worse than the fact that Fields looks completely lost behind a group of players that half these teams would barely even roster in some of these cases. Like, actually, I do wonder if you cut Dante Pettis, if you cut ESB today, who picks him up and how much do they play? Certainly, they don't start, right? And and Draco, I'm not trying to forget necessarily that he had Kyle Shanahan and Adam Morris. Adam Morrison. I missed you. Thanks so much for subscribing. I'm more just begging the question on just, hey, playing devil's advocate, because I like devil's advocate. I will make an argument against myself and attempt to prove myself wrong because it's important, right? If we don't, then I'm just a hammer hitting a nail, right? How how much better does Justin Fields get if instead of throwing to Darnell Mooney, he's throwing to Justin Jefferson? How much better if you cloned Darnell Mooney 3 times would Justin Fields look? Is there any piece of Fields that isn't moving to his next read because he doesn't trust any of them? We don't know, and we won't know this year. Like, there is a ton of this stuff, the semantics, the humanity of football, right? Where you look and you say, wow, Jalen Hurts looks a lot better. And if I pulled up Fields' college tape, hey, to go to bat for all of you guys that are saying, come on, you dingus, how can you blame Fields for this? How can you blame Fields for this? If we look at Fields' college tape, there are a lot more uh there are a lot more anticipatory throws. There are a lot more moments where Fields hung in the pocket and delivered a ball into a contested window. There are a lot more of these moments where Fields said, I trust you with the football, right? And we're not seeing almost any of them now, but to be fair, it isn't as if a lot of these guys objectively are worth trusting. People like me and Reinhardt in the chat would just say it's the quarterback's job to do it. And if you do it and it doesn't work, that sucks for them. It's not your fault. And Reinhardt, you and I also both know that if Fields had thrown 10 contested ball interceptions this year, he would be getting dunked on in the media. And that's the stuff that the player has to go home and live with, right? Like, I know it's stupid, but Justin Fields looked heartbroken over his performance today. And I'm sure part of it is because he knows that every time he plays badly, he has to deal with an internet S storm. Like, there is a lot to this. Some of it that just transcends off the football field. And so I don't I don't know what the answers are. I'm gonna try to figure them out. We're gonna try to get a little bit closer, but we can't know. We can't know until year 3. year 2 within this offense, one way or another, with a lot of upgrades. And if they don't stick with Fields, then chances are either Fields earned it or they're making a rash decision, and we can critique them then. And we can say the front office is being a bunch of dingles. But I also think that it's worth mentioning that I don't know. Quarterback development isn't linear. It can be really hard to it takes thick skin to be a J type. Yeah, it really does, Reinhardt, especially since Jay was raised ever so slightly earlier to where I mean, Jay's older than me, right? Right. Let me see, Jay Cutler. Well, now I want to know how old he is because I have a point to make. Jay Cutler age. Yeah, so Jay Cutler's 39 and I'm 27. Duh. I should have known. Obviously, Jay's older than me. So Jay's 39. I, Robert Schmitz, am 27. When I was 6 years old, the Nintendo 64 was the jam. And then like when I was probably 10, the Nintendo GameCube came out. When I was 15, the hot thing at school was an iTouch. I had like a type to text BlackBerry, like tons of people, right? Like I we just didn't have the access to the internet that I feel like kids, my son will grow up with, whether I like it or not, right? I barely avoid a lot of the stuff that gets said about me, and part of that's because I have to deliberately not go looking. Like, sometimes if you go looking for everything that everybody says about you, you're not gonna find anything good. But, I mean, also, I grew up back when there was, like, a slow computer in the family room, and that's, like, the one everybody used. And so when you were writing your homework for ninth grade history, like, that's where you did it, was in the computer in the middle of the room, like, with your parents watching. And to your point, Reinhardt, like Justin Fields 23. Like he grew up partially in that world, but somebody may have jammed a smartphone in his hand earlier. Justin Fields was like the guy on the internet for a while. Like I understand this is a weird conversation, but it's more me pointing out that a lot of these younger guys, like, yeah, the perception of them in the media kind of matters. Like to because exactly like you're saying, BG, you throw contested picks, you get dunked on. Don't throw them, end up with less than 20 attempts per game, laughed at. Like DVOA put out a stat that says that Justin Fields is like passing DVOA is like super duper duper bad. And like he's probably going to see that, you know? Or maybe he's not. But also, it's not unlikely that if Justin isn't the one on the internet, that Justin's like brother is, and Justin's brother goes, "Yo, man, did you see this?" And now he does, right? Like some of this stuff's unavoidable, and not all of it's because the player goes about looking for it. Some of it's because the player's dad gets mad about it and brings it up in a phone call or something like that. Like they've been saying, and then now they know. And I can't help but look in the middle of a podcast, I guess at the conclusion of a podcast here, where I talked a lot about how disappointed I think I really was. I mean, I was ready. If I could just go through and I could pick all the stuff that I wanted to about like the ways that I would have changed Justin Fields' game, right? Not even necessarily looking, just so that we're on the same page, Draco, not being fair or unfair, not trying to take any plays away from him, but trying to look at some of the easy stuff, right? Justin Fields has 300 yards and 3 touchdowns without changing anything. You can even keep the pick, right? You could say that Kmet dropped it, they ran it twice, and they kicked a field goal. I don't care. Like there's so much of this stuff that you can look at right now within this game. You could say if he checks it down to Mooney on second down or Montgomery on second down, they get in the end zone and nobody asks any questions. You can say if he hits the layup to Ryan Griffin, they get in the end zone and nobody asks any questions. Like there's tons of these plays within this game that I could look at and say, I think Fields underperformed because I think the plays were there. But I also am not the one who has to deal with it at the level that he is. Like, I mean, exactly like you're saying, G. People are merciless in Chicago. There are enough people out there on Twitter that are so pro Bears in any setting whatsoever that sometimes it does feel like a missive on my end to say Kyler Gordon really is struggling, and that's something we should be paying attention to. And then I'm out here talking stuff on a 23-year-old. Like, why? It feels right at the time. Like, I mean, I think I'm just telling the tale of the tape, you know? I think I'm just trying to explain exactly what's going on, but man, I can be just as much of a cyber bully as anybody else on accident. And then there's like a 22-year-old who knows he's giving up the most yards per snap in the NFL. And like, what, you think Kyler doesn't want to do something about it? Like, it's a bizarre world we live in. And trying to really think through the development of these players is so exactly raging. Like, this is the game. I actually completely agree. Like, this is the game. This is how it works. This is why I cover the pros and not NFL, or well, the pros and not college, because pre NIL, college football was a whole bunch of people dunking on literal college kids that sometimes don't know any better. Like, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I can't say one thing or another. I know a friend of mine who is like within the industry picked today as his game where he was out on fields, like period. So it's not as if like he's out. He hit DEFCON 5 in his words, like the Bears inherited a roster without a quarterback, and he said that for the first time today. And I don't know whether he's mad. I don't know if he'll come back around. It doesn't actually matter. It's just one person's opinion. But the point is that like people are brutal. And if there's one saving grace for Justin Fields right now, it's that he has 12 more games to certainly make a statement. Like that somebody mentioned earlier that Justin Fields looked like he broke his leg. Yeah, he looked like he broke his leg. That looked like a Tom Brady knee. Like I could not believe, I could not believe that he stayed upright, let alone finished the game. Justin is taking a beating out there. And he's still trying, and he's still put his team in position to win. As corny as that is, as much as I don't think it mattered. Let me see. Wait, the dude trying to who's doing that censored? Like that dude trying to get clicks being a hater. Justin looked as good. Now I'm interested. Like, what do you mean? Yeah, Ryan, I agree. He's a competitor. You have to love it. On the Herbert block or the Herbert like run, he got downhill. Like there's there's a lot of stuff within this that and Reinhardt, you mentioned Geno Smith. Like Geno Smith looks like he got better. We will throw the baby out with the bathwater all the time because plenty of times the rookie contract is debatably more more valuable than the quarterback that's actually playing within it. Uh Oh, I got you. No, in this case, censored. It was a private message. If it makes you feel any better, it's more me talking about how, like, I know a couple people in the industry. I'm not some big shot, uh, but like within that, he was like he. I don't know. The point is that Fields takes are going to be all over the place, because it wasn't a good game, but it was like just another football game. And Justin had the opportunity, I guess you could say, to get hurt. He didn't get hurt. And thank goodness for that, because he's got a lot of opportunity as he goes forward to then continue moving. And gee, you say Gino's old as dirt. I mean, you're right. But like, I love the simplicity of Gino's comment where he said, "You ever seen me throw before?" And apparently none of us had, because Gino is balling balling right now. Like he's going crazy. And I can't help but think that as just to use, I guess this will be my like final thought. I've been streaming for almost 2 hours or like almost 2.5 hours. You guys are ridiculous. Why are 93 of you guys hanging out with me at almost 1 in the morning? But well, don't we all have work tomorrow? Aren't we all being stupid? But so, like, let's see. Even when Fields had easy plays, for him, he didn't come through. Not great O line, not and wide receivers still got to make plays. Renzo, that is sort of the thesis of the day. Is there were some plays where I think, let me put it this way, undoubtedly, and we're going to talk about this in the all 22. Fields, like Fields, pulled rabbits out of a hat tonight. There were some of these plays that Fields made where you were like, "Who the hell are you? Like, what are you doing? Jeepers creepers. That's amazing." Like, and then there were a bunch where you were like, "Oh, how did you miss that, bud?" Like, there's next to no in between. It's crazy. And so it's it's wild. Like, yeah, I know, Adamola. I've just got to learn. Like, oh my gosh, Michael. Konnichiwa, I guess. But so let me see. He dropped the deck of, oh yeah, no, exactly, Reinhardt. Right? Like, that's a good way to put it. Is that there were points where Fields just pulled the rabbit out of a hat and did something incredible and mystified everybody. Then there were points where Fields unintentionally sawed the assistant in half. And we just, we watched it happen. Like, it feels like the floor hasn't come up all that much, but also the ceiling hasn't come down. So we're still looking at a very similar player to the player that we saw open the season, more or less. And I think there's a lot there. I mean, if anything, you can make the argument that Fields, I mean, maybe there's truth to the idea that Fields needs his Stephon Diggs, he needs his Dawson Knox, he needs his solid offensive line, and he certainly needs his Brian Dable. Now, the worst part to me is that I think had the Bears hired Brian Dable, we would be less worried. It's not that they're running a different offense. It's not that everything is super different in Giant Land. It's that I think that Brian Dable probably would have treated Justin Fields very similar to the way that he treated Josh Allen, and I would have not had to worry about whether Luke Getsy is good enough hands, because I am beginning to just not trust Darnell Mooney's word for the fact that what's his name, that Luke Getsy is some super genius, right? Um, but we'll see. Like, Gerald, I would say probably I've come down to, what if I said this, Gerald? Like, DEFCON 2.5, but this is to me a realistic sounding DEFCON 2.5, because during the podcast I sounded DEFCON 4, even though I kept saying DEFCON 5 or like DEFCON 2.5, right? But this is to me legitimate DEFCON 2.5. And from here, I don't expect it to go up much. Fields could fumble 5 times against the Cowboys, and I would say, what do we really know? Right? Like, that's the that's the complicated piece of this. Is it's like Fields is showing us he has red flags. We can't ignore that Fields has those red flags. Now that we know, the only thing that's going to make this worse is if he gets worse from here, which would be weird. So that's where, or Fields takes a major injury that will completely change his game, which, am I back? Can I be heard? Are you kidding? Man, all that, and you guys didn't get to hear me knock on the wood? What a bummer. But so let's see. More I think about it, we have too much expectations for Fields and the team. Gee, we kind of do. I mean, admittedly, there is a lot of this that you look at, just saying, just talking it out, right? Where we want, or not want, but I came into this year saying the offensive line's awful and the wide receivers are awful and the defense is awful. And here we are staring down the barrel of what could be as low as a 3-13 season, right? And it's not like any of that changed. This is just what it looks like when you actually play all the games, right? Like, even the worst team is going to look medium competitive. And it's, yeah, exactly. Like, the bar has been dropped for progress. I agree, Reinhard, but also I think that sometimes the bar can look like Justin Herbert. And so we the bright side is that Fields is going to have a lot, or Fields is going to get a lot of opportunities to check the ball down, or at least I would hope so. Where they like, you got to assume against the Cowboys that Fields is going to have his internal timer tested. And Michael, I agree with you. This team and Justin is more or less like a victim of politics within the McCaskey organization. So you got that going for you. But either way, guys, I do have to edit this podcast and then I got to go to sleep. So you guys are great. I'll talk to you guys soon. Keep an eye on the channel for the other stuff going on. Support the channel however you can. Pass us around. Talk to, or like, tell your friends. Tell us how you think we can like change for the better. What you want to take a look at. I am working on an Eddie. I'll sneak this into the end for all the 1 a.m. crowders. I'm working on an Eddie Jackson breakdown. Because I think he's been phenomenal. I don't know what'll happen. For all I know, I'm going to spend a bunch of time working on an Eddie Jackson breakdown. I'm going to put it out and they're going to trade him. So that'd be just my luck. But I will say that it'll be interesting to see if the Bears actually sell at the deadline, because say what you will, somebody would probably acquire Quinn if they thought he was like any decent. Let's see. Trying to twig Mini Rob. Exactly. I think that what's his name? Eddie could be a potential trade target. I think that Roquan could be a potential trade target. I don't know. I wish it did, but there are plenty of these things that we can look at and we can mutter to ourselves like, "Ooh, what's going to happen with this team?" So, how much better do they get if they trade Eddie Jackson? Probably not. Like J2K, they don't need to extend him. They've got 2 more years on his contract. But either way, you guys, you're great. I'll catch you soon. And bear down. Thanks so much for bearing with me.